live from the Drew Estate Cigar Studio in Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome to the Spare Notes series with your hosts, Matt Tabacco and William Cooper.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Spare Notes series. My name is Matt Tabacco from SmokinTabacco.com, and I'm joined once again by my very good friend, Mr. William Cooper of Cigar-Coop.com. William, thanks for being here with me this week. For those of you who are watching and listening at home, this is not live. This is all pre-recorded. There was no live show this week. I'm sorry, but I'm just going to come out and say it, as I think it's fair, at the request of Mr. Cooper and his Phillies being in the World Series. He said, hey, can we record this earlier on so that way for Saturday night it can just be baseball time? And I said, absolutely. So here we are. We're going to record this, and we'll be going back to our regularly scheduled live programming in 2 weeks on our regular schedule, because by then the World Series will definitely be over. So we'll be back to live. But for today, it's pre-recorded.
And I appreciate that, but really, thank you very much. You know, it was one of those things where I always I'm going to jinx him. But, you know, like I was telling you, it usually, when it comes to the Phillies, we're not like we've not been fortunate as the Red Sox. It's been a decade sometimes between World Series for us. So, it's certainly been 14 years. So, it's 13 years actually, because we won 14 years ago. So I appreciate it. It's I hope I don't jinx them, but we'll see what happens.
I'm not going to say anything that may jinx the team, so I'm not going to say too much about it other than, I'll talk about, what I've seen in terms of gameplay. But I'm not going to say anything else. There's a couple of irons I have in the fire that are on the superstitious side, but I'm not going to reveal it because I don't want to jinx myself. I tried to watch as much of the game last night as I could. Unfortunately, I was out and about with the family and friends, and so I caught some of it at the restaurant. It was on the bar TV. I came home, and I ended up watching the rest of the game at home. So I saw pretty much, solidly, I saw the bottom of the sixth to the end.
Right.
So half. I saw the second half. So, big comeback by the Phillies, first of all. That just needs to be, just throw it out there.
Right.
Big comeback. Justin Verlander continues to, I think his ERA in the World Series alone, in his, 4 or 5 World Series appearances,
It's a disaster.
It's a 6.07. ERA.
It's like the worst of any pitcher who's pitched 30 games or something in the world, something like that. I forget, 30 innings or something like that.
So you have that factor. The other thing was the last time a team overcame such a deficit of 5-0 and won the game in the World Series was 2002, and the Angels did it to Dusty Baker's San Francisco Giants, and now Dusty Baker's Houston Astros. How about them? How about them apples?
I'm a big Dusty guy, and if we have to lose it, I really would love to see Dusty get a championship. I think he's a good guy. I think he stabilized that mess down in Houston.
Been around a long time.
I like Dusty. I think he's good for the game. So I have no problem if we're gonna lose. I'd rather lose to him like that. But Dusty's had he's had his issues in the playoffs, but I could just tell you that Verlander looked good for the first 3 innings. Then things just started to completely unravel, like I never saw. And I figured this ain't our night. And I think I made a comment at the house, I think it's time we could turn our sets off here, but I didn't. And this team is and here's the thing, and this team, I'm glad we pre-recorded this. Unlike the Yankees were just they had no effort. Maybe Game 4 there was no effort by the Yankees. The Phillies had a sense of urgency. You could see it.
I think one of the things that I wanted to add to was that we were talking about this before. First of all, you and your goatee are dynamite. You look great. I know you won't keep it after the playoffs, but you look dynamite.
Thank you.
We talked about this. I said, well, something I noticed. You want to talk about superstitions and all of that. A lot of times in professional sports, especially hockey, usually football, baseball, it's kind of like an no, it's not really a rule, but it's like an unspoken thing where like you don't shave. You grow
Yeah.
it till you lose or you win it all, right?
Right.
Houston Astros showed up last night, and a handful of them looked pretty cleanly shaved, and I was like, I don't know if that's a good strategy, guys. And players themselves are usually very superstitious. They're the ones playing the game. I'm like, oof, that's a strange sighting to walk into the World Series. No hair on the face.
Now, if that was their ritual, here's the thing. I agree, but I don't know what their ritual was beforehand. Maybe that's something they've done
Maybe
when they won it in 2018, but they did lose it the last two World Series they were in.
it's
So,
true.
so who knows? I mean, that's that. But I don't know what they're like. I'm not gonna get over. Look, anything I do superstitious is completely weird and makes no logic, right? But does it make me feel better? Yes, is all I can tell you.
That's all that matters.
It's all that matters. Like I'm not into like evil spirits or anything like that, But I'm just saying, I'm just very, very set in ways when a team is in a run like this. And look, now it's I gotta admit, it's changing a little for me because I was like, oh, I'm happy to be here, happy to be here. Now we win a World Series game, and I know it's not gonna be easy, but now I'm like, 3 more games. Can something? I mean, it's within our reach right now. So it's not gonna be easy. I can tell you that. We're not gonna sweep this series. So
I don't think it's going to be a sweep, but I mean, you got one in Houston. Even if you lose tonight, you come back to Philly 1-1. You got 3 at home. If you can at least get 2 of those, you go back to Houston, ready to tie it up. Wrap it up. Well, wrap it up. I mean, that's the mindset there. But
in '83. In '83, we split the first 2 games we won the first game in Baltimore, lost the second game in Baltimore, and then got swept in Philly. So I mean, we've been here before, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, 40 years ago.
Yeah, the difference was with that '83 Phillies team is that was an aging team that got to one more World Series with the run of those guys. I mean, they were getting older. This team, while it's not a young Phillies team, it's certainly not as old as that team was.
And you look at Baltimore. I mean, they had a young Cal Ripken who went on to have a Hall of Fame career. I mean, it was a different time.
Yeah, it was a different time for sure. Eddie Murray was still there.
That's right, Eddie Murray. Yep.
You know what's funny? We had this pitcher in the World Series. His name was Willie Hernandez, and he was like a middle reliever, setup guy. We trade him to the Tigers the year after. He goes on to win the Cy Young as a reliever, the MVP, and I believe he was the World Series MVP, but the Tigers won the World Series that year. Had to be one of the worst trades in Philadelphia history, getting rid of that guy.
It's funny because you look at the Phillies, right? And who's the captain of the ship right now?
Oh, it's Bryce.
No. Not in not in the clubhouse.
The captain of the ship.
Yeah, who's running the ship right now in Philadelphia?
Dombrowski.
Yeah. Well, where did Dombrowski come from?
Boston.
Yeah, what did he do in Boston?
Won a World Series.
He did. Now,
everyone told me he was going to ruin the franchise. Everyone was telling me this. He's going to ruin your franchise. He made great moves, is what he did.
Now, the one critique about Dombrowski in Boston is he did deplete our farm system to build that team. And I understand, building a World Series team, especially when you have the assets and the money, the cash flow. I mean, yeah, you're going to spend some money. You're going to get some good guys. You're going to develop some guys. A couple of years, you make the right moves. You build up a team. And we got it. So it's like you look at it like, yeah, well, did we win a World Series? Yeah. I mean, is it worth it? I mean, I'd rather have that one World Series than, have, nothing, and maybe almost taste it, for like 3 or 4 years, because we didn't have quite the right team where we just, to put all your chips in the middle, go get it. And we did. And I'm happy with it. I mean, teams go up and down. So it's like it probably would have happened anyway. So it's like I don't fully fault Dombrowski for that. I think a lot of people gave him a hard time about that here in Boston from things you hear around. Also, I think it was a little surprising that he was fired as easily and as quickly as he was here in Boston. I think maybe we could have held on to him for a little bit longer, and maybe we would have, been in a better situation. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was crazy when they got rid of him. Now the thing is, with Philly, the film system was already depleted, so but the difference is he's got a general manager with him that works with him, Sam Fold.
Yes.
So he's more in the presidential role, but he has been working to rebuild the farm system. That's going to take. It doesn't happen overnight. But I believe Dave Dombrowski engineered the two big acquisitions of Castellanos and Schwarber this year. I believe those were Dombrowski moves, and they were the moves. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for those two moves. So he's done a really, really, really good job, in my opinion. The fear that the one thing I do know about his contract, though, is he has an out clause if Major League Baseball puts the team in Nashville. He asked for that out clause because he lives in Nashville, which would suck if that happens. And
I get it, though.
agreed to that. But we don't. There's no. You know what? Like you said, you got to think of now. You can't worry about 3 years from now. You know what I mean? You got to think now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Dombrowski's he's been around. I mean, he got one with the Marlins. He got one in Boston. I'm surprised he
almost got one in Detroit.
He did. I'm surprised that he didn't. I think that would have been good for him. But now here he is with the Phillies. With 3 games to win. He could get a third one here with Philadelphia, and that could be great. I think that they definitely have. I think they have the right people. In the clubhouse, in the front office. I think all around they have a good situation. Houston's got good players. They got Dusty Baker's a good manager. They have a little bit of a marred history, but at the same time they've still continued to advance to a World Series in the last couple of years. So you
the
see.
Problem is there is still some baggage with that cheating team, and you can't ignore it, right? As much as I think Dusty Baker cleaned up a lot of the culture there, you can't ignore, just like you can't ignore the Yankee cheating that happened. You just can't wipe it aside. It's there. It happened. So you have this little bit of a cautious eye. I don't see any evidence that the Astros have been cheating in this series. Obviously, losing a game last night. But you can't help it. But I'm not going to call these guys the cheating Astros anymore either.
Yeah, I think it's time to move on from that.
If they get caught again, but I tell you what, if they get caught again, they should get stripped of pennants, division titles, World Series, whatever. They should get stripped of it if it happens again. And there shouldn't be any lean.
The thing is, too, is most teams, whether you want to realize it or not, to some degree, try to steal signs. I mean, it's just part of the game. I mean, they've been trying to steal the signs from the beginning of time. But there are people who go a little bit farther than they should.
Yeah, the problem is the technology made it different now.
So, it's like it just stick to the conventional ways, right? You know what I mean? Because there's also nothing illegal about you got a guy, picks up on signs from out in the field or whatever. Like, I mean, that's part of the game. But banging on the barrels.
You know what I laugh about? Like, and again, I hear this. Aaron Judge is clean, right? And he is innocent until proven guilty. They said he's submitting the drug test all the time in Major League Baseball. I said, why don't Aaron Lewis just call up a Tour de France rider how to get around a drug test? I'm just saying, there's ways around this stuff, okay? So don't say, oh, he's getting tested. Because believe me, I follow Tour de France cycling a lot. I mean, and I've gotten very disgusted with the sport because of that. But there were so many ways they evaded these tests in the Tour de France, and still can.
Yeah. So it's not impossible. It's been done before. It can continue to be done.
Exactly. I wouldn't say it's all. Let's not assume it's all cleaned up. Is what I'm telling people.
By the way, what are you
smoking? But he's innocent until proven guilty. Oh, so I lit up a pre-release of the El Popo. So the El Popo, you heard of the Viva La Vida cigar?
Yes.
El Popo is the second line that they are releasing.
Oh, nice.
Yep. So, and of course, I use my Cigar Blondie cutter and lighter.
That's right.
Available in Whacker. Great cutter, but I can't. I love the soft fan blade flame. It's a little hard to see with my light here, but I love that. And this cutter is a sturdy cutter.
It is. It's very solid.
It's solid.
No flex when it's open. Like you see that, like it's very stiff. Sometimes you get cutters and they're just like this, and they're just flimsy. This is, I mean, that's
And for someone like me who's, getting the onsets of arthritis, right? Very easy to just make a clean cut with it. And
Feels
keep
good
the
in the
blades
hand.
clean. All you got to do is keep the blades clean on this thing, and it will work great. So I've been using it a lot. You got the silver one. And I think
Great, any angle, it stays.
Mrs. Smokin Tobacco's got the white, right?
That's right, she does. She has the white, I have the chrome, you have the black. It's available in those three amazing finishes. Our cutters and lighters are, once again, provided by Cigar Blondie Accessories. You can head over to cigarblondie.com to check them out and order yours today.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Really cool stuff.
Great stuff. Really good stuff. And I guess I'm very happy. Thank you to Leo for providing some of these to use on the show.
Thank you, Leo. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we do. Yep.
I'm smoking the. I'm going old school. Or not old school, but I'm going classic. I'm going Perdomo 10th anniversary. Champaign, Connecticut. It's one of my favorites. Just a nice, easy cigar to get the day started off. Well, my smoking time started. So.
Yeah, I really like that line a lot, and but I've been gravitating lately a little more to the sun-grown, which I think gets forgotten about compared to the Maduro and this champagne. But there's that sun-grown is pretty good.
I think the same too. For me, I was so set on a lot of Perdomo sun-grown stuff for like a good year and a half, almost 2 years.
Yep.
And then I kind of stepped away, and then from Perdomo as a whole, not like intentionally, just kind of like I started getting just really surrounded with more smoking and stuff. And then when I came back to kind of smoking Perdomo regularly again, I found that when I started with Perdomo again, I came back and I went with the Maduros, and I found myself in the Maduros for a while, and I had like this whole stint with Perdomo Maduros, and then that stopped, and now I've come back to Perdomo again, and I've been smoking a lot of the Connecticut stuff. So it's crazy because I do the same thing with like multiple brands. Like you smoke something from a brand, and then you kind of like step away from that brand for a while, and then you come back to it, but then you smoke like a different kind of tobacco or a different collection or a different line, and then you stop, and then you go somewhere. So it's like you constantly like you're in and out of brands. But then like as you go in and out, you're also changing what you smoke when you go back to them. It's not always like the same cigar. So.
Yeah, it's definitely true with that. In fact, it's kind of weird because I'd say this year I've really been smoking a lot more Tatuaje. Mainly because there's been a lot to smoke that's been coming out, right? But it even has kind of gotten me back to some of the old favorites with Tatuaje. Like a few years ago I was smoking a lot of Davidoff, and the only reason maybe I'm smoking less Davidoff is there's been less new releases. So, but what happens when I tend to smoke the new release, I tend to go back and smoke a classic from that line as well. So I kind of go back and we'll revisit other stuff in that line. It's just kind of a cycle I go through.
Yeah, I totally feel you on that. I agree. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I feel I go through similar patterns like I was just saying, and it's just people ask me like, well, like, have you smoked this lately? And I'm like, no. And like, oh, why don't you smoke that anymore? I thought you liked them. It's like, I do. It's like, there's so, and I talked about this the other night, a little bit with Alec Cuevas on our Smoking Tobacco show on Thursday night. It's like, there's just so much stuff. There's so much stuff out there now. It's not like it was 20, 30 years ago where you're like...
It's insane how much stuff's out there.
And people back then, too, like there was a lot less companies and a lot less cigars and stuff that were, on the market. But people, like, if you smoked, Fuente Chateau, like that's what you smoked. You didn't smoke Padron. No, you smoke Fuente, the Royal Salutes or the Chateau Fuente. Like that's what you bought. That's the only box you're buying. Now it's like people will buy, a couple of those, a couple of these, a couple of those, a couple of those. Maybe they buy a box of those, a box of these, and a box of those. And it's like, now you got 20 different brands that are probably sitting in front of you at that point. People are smoking so much more of a variety. And it's hard to stay with one brand all the time. And I know that there's people who still do it. And I know there's people who do it.
Right.
But yeah, it's not as common anymore.
I think I may have told this story, and I apologize if I'm going to tell it again, but, I was with my dad once in a premium cigar store, and my dad smoked one brand of cigarettes for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Carlton, right? That's what he smoked, right? It was supposedly the mildest cigarette out there, right? And as I'm going in there, I have one of those trays, and I'm putting this cigar. I was in Nat Sherman. I'm getting a Nat Sherman. I'm getting a My Father or something like that. I forget. And my dad looks at me. He's like, "Can't you make up your mind what you're gonna smoke?" He's like, "Why are you getting all these cigars?" I'm like, "Dad, that's what we do. It's very different than a cigarette. Like there's there's very little it's not there's not as much loyalty anymore."
No.
Um, I've heard Fred Ruiz specify that there is brand loyalty, but not blend loyalty. So, like he was saying, there were a lot of people who smoke his Nomad cigars when he had the company, but not necessarily addicted to one line, but they supported the brand as a whole. And I think we see a lot of that today, for
I would
sure.
agree with that. I agree with that very strongly. I think because
Yeah,
there's definitely people out there. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. There's 5 brands right now that you could just name right off the top of your head without even thinking about it. They're like, yeah, I consistently smoke stuff from them all the time. Maybe not the same cigar, but it's made by that company.
yeah. And then, there's obviously we have sponsors, and I'm sure you're in the same boat as I. We take sponsors on because we believe in their product.
Yeah.
And I think most media people do that, by the way. So if we're taking on a sponsor, we believe in the product. We're smoking the product. I don't. And the funny thing is, I've never had a company call me and say, "Hey, you need to smoke more of our stuff," right? I'm like, because they know I'm smoking the stuff, I'm talking about their stuff, and they know I'm covering 100 companies too, right? So, but it's always a natural product. Like I smoked Perdomo for years. I smoked Alec Bradley for years, and I'm blessed to have these guys as sponsors, and a lot of these other companies. But I smoke the stuff too, and I'm sure, like I said, I know the sponsors you have. I've seen you smoke this stuff quite a bit.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
they're all companies that we believe in. It's all
Yeah.
stuff we like, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not hard to do. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's like,
Now.
well, I'm gonna smoke Drew Estate. They're a sponsor. Well, that's not hard to do. They got a bunch of great stuff. J.C. Newman, same boat.
Yeah.
You
Now
know.
I dropped a couple. Yeah. Now I dropped a couple of 86s and 87s on companies this weekend. Who like what? What do we get that score for? I'm like, still a good score. It just wasn't a 90. So that does happen too. I mean, I dropped. There's gonna be a score coming out. There's a couple of scores coming out. People are gonna be a little surprised, I think, about one cigar in particular. Uh,
Yeah, you released a good amount of reviews this week.
we this month there'll be a minimum, like when the month's over, there'll be 29 reviews published, and there was a lot in the backlog because reviews were kind of being worked on during the PCA post dump. So, and I just didn't want to oversaturate what we were doing. So I had a bunch in the backlog and a bunch I had to finish. So, yeah, this has been a crazy, crazy month. I do want to give you a little bit of credit on something. Talking about reviews. So I had smoked Paladin de Saka last when Steve sent out those samples last year,
Mhm.
and I took a lot of crap because I was very critical of that on the half wheel consensus, right? But I also didn't really love the cigar. I was like,
No, you
this
didn't.
is and I told you that.
I know.
And then you came back from TPA, right? And you're telling me, Coop, this cigar was great. I'm like, I don't see it. I don't see it. Um, so one of the reviews I hadn't done was the Paladin de Saka that I had a kind of smoking right up this month. And I'm Matt. I smoked it. I'm like, Matt, this thing is the best cigar Saka's done. I'm like, I was sold on it. I'm like, completely different experience than I had when he sent the stuff out.
Fanboy.
Oh well, I mean,
Fanboy.
look, I
That's
dropped
what
some.
you said to me the last
I
time
did say I did call you a fanboy.
Fanboy.
Fanboy. But when you're right, you're right, and I got to give you credit on that. And look, I dropped some 88s on Sakas this with the Stillwell Stars, which is not a bad smoke score, by the way. But in our industry, it's a death sentence.
Well, it's
These
funny because Aaron Loomis told me I suck at reviews this week because I said that I don't like fucking Pepsi. Like, sorry. Pepsi
I
sucks.
I missed that. I
don't-
missed that.
I had a thread on Facebook and I was
Well,
just
that's
like,
why. Well, yeah, the Pepsi. I mean, look, Diet Coke's Diet Coke. I mean, there's this. It's the drink that Mike Francesa drank on his Mike and the Mad Dog for years, and I've carried it over.
Coke came first. Let's just call it what it is.
There's a great commercial from the '80s with Don Mattingly and Phil Negro of the Yankees, and basically Don Mattingly, who's the younger guy, is embracing classic Coke. And Phil Niekro, the older guy, he was like pitching like 45 years old for the Yankees. He's embracing New Coke, and I thought it was just the coolest commercial of those two guys.
I think I've seen that commercial.
It's on YouTube if you
Yeah.
Google it. And Mattingly, who's not the best actor in the world, like he's kind of dry. It still works because Negro carries the commercial a bit. He's a little more animated, so it's just a beautiful commercial. I was like, that's so cool when I saw that. Like, that was a good commercial.
Then there was the speaking of the '80s, in the New Coke campaign. I think it was the New Coke campaign. Was the Max Headroom, the Catch the Wave?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember the controversy surrounding New Coke. I mean, you weren't even born.
No,
And
but I've been told that like when New Coke came along, it was like, no, this isn't good.
so, and there's all conspiracy theories. It was done on purpose and stuff like that, right? But remember, there's no internet back then, right? There's no. I mean, you basically heard about this on the 11 o'clock news. Is how you heard about this, or read it in the paper, or to it. And I'm telling you, this was all over the place. I mean, it had to be one of the biggest stories of like 1984, 1985 when that came out. It was unbelievable the attention that got.
And they ended up going back to the original recipe not too long after, right?
Well, then the theory is a conspiracy theory that's what they were going to do all along. Is they were going to come out with it. They want to have a second flavor of Coke. So there's that. So there's a lot of people who believe that. I don't know what to believe on it. New Coke was different. I didn't think it was terrible. It wasn't as good as the original. I'll be honest, but it was to mess with, and Coke and Pepsi were in an absolute war in the war in the 80s and 90s too. Those companies were at like brutal war.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there, but from the things that I have retained, the information I've retained, listening to people or reading about. I like to read about a lot of random shit online late at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Coke was the thing. Then Pepsi came along. Then it was like the new Coke came out, and that was the flop. And it was like it was more of a flop than Matt the flop.
Oh, it was. Well, now it's getting close, but yeah.
Now it's getting close.
I'm telling you, the new Coke, you can still get it if you go to the Coca-Cola place down in Atlanta, by the way. Which I advise if you're ever in Atlanta, go see the Coca-Cola exhibit. You'll drink like hundreds of sodas and get sick. But it's a cool exhibit. It's a beautiful it's a nice place to go for the day. It's free, I believe. So I got new Coke.
If you go to Five Guys or like Wendy's, they got that special Coke machine where you pick your base Coke. You get regular Coke, Diet Coke, caffeine-free Diet Coke, Coke Zero, and then you can go cherry, strawberry, orange, vanilla, and whatever, and you can make any kind of flavor of Coke now.
You can mix and match. You can even mix and match and
do Sprite and Coke.
Yeah, that's Sprite, and you can do the flavored Sprites, I think, too with it. It's actually pretty cool. That was straight. How did we get onto New Coke?
Well, I had said that Aaron Loomis said that I sucked at reviews because I made a post and I said that Pepsi tasted like. We are doing reviews now. They're just not posted yet.
Okay,
we're finalizing
you're not doing Coke. Okay.
But I said Pepsi tastes like water and like Sweet and Low, like someone had a glass of water, put like 5 packets of Sweet and Low in there, and then they did like a splash of Diet Coke, so you have like that cola flavor to it. But it's like it tastes like watered down. It tastes super sweet. It just tastes like a very very 2-dimensional flavor, and it's just not mellow.
I don't hate Diet Pepsi, but I will admit I have to load that up with a lot more ice. It's much sweeter, and I want to dilute that a bit more.
Right?
Yeah. That's what I'll say.
It's way too sweet. I know right away. And you know what I hate too? It's my other beef.
Okay.
You go to a restaurant or a bar, you're like, can I get a Makers and Diet Coke? Okay. Or can I just get a Diet Coke? Yeah. And then they come back and they don't tell you, and you're like, is this Pepsi? Oh yeah. Look, some places you go and you'll be like, hey, Diet Coke, is Pepsi okay? And I'll be like,
yeah, they'll tell you.
I'll take a water instead. Okay, cool. Then they don't tell you, and it's like, now I'm sitting here drinking this Pepsi, and I don't even want it.
It was, it's.
But then again,
I mean,
by choice, I just need to say this. I'm a Dr. Pepper guy anyway. I only drink Coke if I go to a restaurant. So I'll drink it there. But like at home, I don't drink a lot of soda. But what I do is I drink Dr Pepper. So that's really my poison.
The best Coke is Mexican Coca-Cola.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna say Mexican Coke. Yeah, it's got that natural sugar thing. I mean, I'm gonna be going to Mexico next month, and I can't wait. You can get Mexican Coke in Mexico.
It's the one that comes in the old style glass bottles.
Yeah.
You usually see them at Costco and BJ's. They sell like the big pack of them, and like the old the tall glass bottle.
Yeah.
Those are made in Mexico, and I'm sure you know why they taste different because there is something different about them.
Yeah, it's the sugar. I did a show.
It's
with
pure
Robbie
sugar
Rasmussen.
cane.
Yeah. I did a show. Robbie Rasmussen on. Like, he used to do his show called Sharing Our Pairings with the surgeon, and I'm not a drinker, and they wanted to do a soda pop show, so they actually asked me to do the soda pop show. So I brought on different sodas from different sodas that were rare sodas and stuff like that, and I actually pulled up the Mexican Coca-Cola in that bottle. It's in the glass bottle, yeah.
Yep.
And it's fantastic. And you also, when you go down to Nicaragua, you can get that too.
Yeah, I'm sure that makes probably a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is what's interesting is, and I think even the Coke outside the United States and other countries is different too, because remember Nicole lived a good portion of her childhood in the United Kingdom. Now it's a discussion that we've had many times in our house where. Food in general. There's certain things that we eat that they also eat, and it's even like brand name stuff, but it's completely different because of there's so many ingredients and preservatives and things like that we use in everything all the time that are illegal in most of those other countries, especially like England. So they don't use like a lot of preservatives. They don't use high fructose corn syrup and all that crap. They'll just use pure sugar. Because obviously, it's not the healthiest, it's not the best for you. So like one of the things like with Nicole was telling me, she's like, how like you might go to the grocery store and buy a loaf of bread, and that loaf of bread might last you almost a week, maybe. She's like, in England, like if I bought a loaf of bread, I was buying another loaf of bread 2 days later because it does not stay fresh. And I'm like, what? She's like, it's because they don't load it with all that crap.
Yep.
Same thing with dairy products and other stuff like that. She's like, yeah, like we went grocery shopping multiple times a week because like stuff just doesn't last over there because they don't put so many chemicals and other things in it. And I'm like, huh.
So interesting. And my perception is I've been to the continent 3 times. Like I've been to England twice, and I've been to the continent 3 times. Sweden, Italy, France were the main places I was at, and those are EU countries. And the EU countries tend to be Sweden. I don't think it's an EU country actually, but the EU countries are even more regulated. Is what I'll just say. Like, we talk about the FDA being a problem, and I know this firsthand because I've done work with the EU for one of my jobs. The EU is much worse with regulations. Trust me, it's 1,000 times worse. Because I was working on a pharmaceutical software project, and we did something for the FDA regulations, and then they wanted to go do the same thing for the EU. And the EU was just an absolute nightmare. I spent a month in Italy doing it, and so I'm not. So I was saying is it's probably worse on the continent. I haven't really paid much attention to that, but it's probably worse.
Oh yeah, I mean, I believe it. From even what she's told me about, her time living in England and like certain things. I'm like, they're not the only ones doing that either. I mean, it's they're strict about it. And you know what? There's a reason why there's a lot more unhealthy people in the United States than there are in other parts of the world. Because people in the United States like to eat a lot of shit, and other parts of the world they just don't do that. I mean, like perfect example, you go to Asia, right? You go to a Chinese restaurant here, like whatever. A lot of the times it's not always the freshest stuff, but like real like Chinese people, Japanese people, like Asian like communities in general, like in their own countries. Like it's all about like fresh. I mean, like I've worked with people who were immigrants from that over there and that live here, and like they'd be telling me about like they were making dinner. Like I have to go down to Chinatown today to get like a duck, like a live duck that they're gonna kill and feather right there, and I'm gonna eat it tonight. Like they gotta like it's gotta be like killed and eaten like that day. Like they gotta eat it fresh. That's how people eat.
New York. The best Chinese meal I've had was in Cuba.
Really?
In Chinatown there. Now, it's real because I was definitely now all the dishes are more rice based than noodle based is the difference. But I'm telling you, it was really, really good. The food there that we had, definitely.
Interesting.
Like I said, I still think it's the best Chinese food, and I love Chinese food too. The
Yeah.
best Chinese food meal I had was in Chinatown there.
But that's like another example. Is like you look at like those communities, like it's the same thing. Like they want to eat fresh foods. Like they kill it and eat it that day. Like they don't have this like, oh yeah, we'll cook chicken from like 4 weeks ago that was slaughtered and like it's gonna go bad tomorrow. Like no, like they kill it, they eat it that day. Like it's all about fresh stuff, and like we do that here, but it's not like it is in other countries. I mean,
No,
it's just it's
it's
different.
much. Yeah, it's different, and we say a lot about the FDA here, and you're right. It could be a lot worse.
Even like the USDA
Yeah.
with some of their
Yep.
stuff. Like I've had a few conversations with people who deal with that stuff, and
Yeah, I mean, I talked to the guy from Cattle Baron Cigars, and he deals with that with his beef business. So yeah,
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 it's not how it is. Like I remember even like talking to Nicole and Jonathan, my brother-in-law, because he lived over there for a little while too, and I just remember him like they'll be like burgers in England. Like the meat, it tastes different. It doesn't
It
taste
tastes
like
different.
like
Yeah.
it does here, and it's the
Yeah.
same thing. It's cow, it's beef, but they're like, yeah, the beef does not taste the same over there.
No, absolutely not.
So it's like even stuff like that. Like you think like, well, it's just beef. I don't know. I
Yeah.
haven't done it, but according to them, like no, like hamburgers and stuff, like it tastes different. It's not like it
Yeah.
is here. So
It's definitely. I mean, I tend to have more fish and chips in England, and,
Oh.
and stuff like that.
yeah, that's that. They love that stuff. They're always talking about the chippy. They're like, oh, we used to go down to the chippy.
There was a picture. I think I put it up on Facebook because my last time I was in England was 4 years ago this week, and I went over to Windsor one day and literally was on the Thames River, and there was a fish and chips place where you could eat right next to the river, and smoking cigars there. And it was cold. The week I was in England, it was like in the mid 50s, and we had snow flurries at night outside of London. So it was cold that week, but it was good.
It's so funny. I wish Nicole was down here because she could talk more about this. But I know like one of the other things she was saying was like, yeah, she's like in England, like they don't do like a lot of like air conditioning is not a thing in England. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah,
I've never
it's
been
not
to
a
England
thing.
where I've needed it. I've never been to England when I need it, but the 2 times I was to England were both in the month of October. So that's probably my explanation there.
Yeah.
I did need it in Italy. It was hot in Italy. I did need it there. And obviously, I didn't need it in Sweden.
I mean, Nicole didn't live in like London though. You have to remember like where
Yeah.
it's probably more accustomed there. Nicole grew up in the East Midlands in Northern Ireland. I mean, England. Sorry, in
England.
Northern
Yeah.
England. I think I want to say 3 hours from London. Like very rural area of England. So, I mean, it's according to her, a lot of the houses and stuff like they're all like really old. It's all like really old stuff, and she's like, yeah, like we didn't like there wasn't like a lot of air conditioning and stuff like that. Like it's just not like really a thing, like it is here. Like people just kind of put up with it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But like I was a little surprised. Like I said, my last trip where we had snow flurries, and I was staying in a town called Egham, which is outside of London, and I was staying at one of these old like manor lounges, hunting lounges, which was beautiful. And it got cold. It was actually snowing. It didn't stick or anything, but there was like you could see it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was at night.
Yeah. It's on my list. We're trying to go maybe next year. We'll see.
It's worth going. It's worth going. London's just amazing. I can't get enough of London. So
Well, I mean, I've always wanted to go to London. I've always wanted to see like Dublin and stuff like that. So like now that like Nicole, like I'm married to Nicole, it was like
yeah,
I'm like okay, well like like I want to go over there because
Yeah.
like you lived there, like you have
Yeah.
family there, like I want to like it's more of an excuse for me to like I really want to go, and she's like okay, like we'll go. She's like it's just like I gotta go see my mom and then I gotta go to do this. And
Yeah.
then we can go to London and like I don't know if we can go to Ireland at the same time. So like that would be a separate trip. And I'm like I don't care. Like let's just go. I want to go.
No,
I
I
wanna see
mean,
England.
I mean, yeah, I mean, another cool place to go is actually out to Wales and Bath. Those are really cool to go. Bath was one of my favorite cities to hang in. We stayed out there one night. Like this is 30 years ago.
That sounds
and it's-
familiar. Why is that? I feel like me and Nicole were talking about Bath the other day.
Bath is it's in the western part near Wales, and it's famous. It has the Roman baths there, but it's just a really cool city to hang out in. So and a lot of people tend to do the Stonehenge, Salisbury, Bath tour.
Yeah.
Like they tend to do an excursion out of London and do that.
I want to go to Cadbury World, which is in the
I
Birmingham area, and it's so funny because it's not the only reason why I want to go to England. But if you ask Nicole, she'll be like, he only wants to go to England because he wants to go to Cadbury World, which is not true. There's a lot of things in England I want to see. I want to go to London. Yeah. There's a lot of things in London I want to see. Nicole's actually, to be honest with you, Nicole's actually never really traveled around London. She's only ever flown through London because she lives so far away. So she's never even really gone through London before. So it's kind of like the same thing. Like I just want to experience London.
And you can't. It's like it's big, and you can't do it all in one shot.
Yeah.
This last trip I made, I did get to do. I wasn't into cigars the first time I went, but obviously I did the pilgrimage to J.J. Fox, which is a absolute must go if you're a cigar fan to go see their. They have a museum downstairs. So you get into the museum, and you're gonna say, "This is it." You'll spend 2 hours in there. Trust me, it's so cool to just look at the artifacts they have in there. Even though it's small, for me it was like the best museum I ever went to. I just loved it. So there's a lot of Churchill type stuff there.
I've always heard about J.J. Fox, but I'd never heard about the museum downstairs. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, there's a pit that you can actually still let you. They have the Winston Churchill chair that he sat in, and you could sit in it, and you could take your cigar and take pictures. They're really cool about it. But they have a lot of old cigar brands and stuff, Cuban brands. It's really, and it's a great place. They have a great lounge to friendly staff. And Dunhill and Davidoff are near those too. It's right near, by the way, Buckingham Palace. So Westminster. So it's a great area to go to begin with.
Well, that's good.
Nero's Coffee, by the way. Nero's Coffee is there too. Nero's is a chain of coffee in London. It's great.
It's funny. Nicole said something about that today because she said, because there's Cafe Nero, like here.
Cafe Nero, yeah.
And
Nero, it's Nero. It's something Nero. It is.
She was like,
white.
Yeah, she was like, they had, because she was like, oh, she's like, I'm trying to remember what she goes. They have like, it's not Cafe Nero, but she's like, it's like Cafe Nero, and they have it in England. That's like popular. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah. She goes, it's funny. Like, she's like, we didn't have Dunkin' Donuts over there, but we had a lot of Starbucks and like Nero. And I was like,
Nero.
Oh, really? So it's funny. We were just talking about that today. Yeah.
So I don't want to give away where Nicole works, right? But if you go right across the street from the place that the company I guess she works, there's a Nero. It's directly across the street.
Yeah. How do you know that?
Because I know where she works.
Like the
actual. I went there.
The location.
I went there. Yeah, I went there. I was at that, and it's right near J.J. Fox. It's all right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I don't want to give away where she works. But yeah, the best way you should go to that place because you'll be right near J.J. Fox and Nero.
The Nero near where Nicole works is It's
you could smoke there too because there's outdoor smoking there.
In England.
Yeah.
Yeah, in England.
Smoke in England, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm talking. When I say I'm talking about where she works has a establishment in London.
Yes, I know. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Wait. So you're telling me you've been to the one near where she works?
The Nero? Yes.
Yeah.
I have pictures from there on my Facebook page.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was this the last time you came up here?
No, London. I'm talking about London.
Oh, see, I'm getting confused because I'm like, wait, did you go to that one too?
So let me go. In England, there's a coffee chain called Nero.
Because I was trying to figure out how do you know that there's a Nero near Nicole?
Okay, so there's a Nero. There's a Nero in London. Okay.
Yeah.
And you could smoke out there. Right across the street is the establishment of where Nicole works. Right.
Oh, they have one over there too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's fancy. It's a fancy.
Yeah.
And then down the block is J.J. Fox.
Because it's
the Westminster area, yeah.
Because it's funny, because where Nicole works now, there's a Cafe Nero nearby. So that's why I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, unless I have the wrong, but I think I know the it's a chain she works for.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a very popular chain.
Yes,
but
very
it's a global
big company.
brand, and they have an establishment in Westminster. Right across the street is the Cafe Nero, and down the block is J.J. Fox, Davidoff, and Dunhill. It's like the perfect area to go to.
Yeah. That's good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I think her management perks apply globally. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's good to know.
It's good. It is good to know. Yeah. I was staying in Egham when I went. So that was painful. So because I should have just transferred hotels to London, and I didn't, because getting to Egham to London was expensive, or I had to take the train. So, which was like 3 trains. So.
Yeah, that's one thing she did tell me. She's like, "Yeah, be prepared. We might be taking the train a lot." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "That's how we get around over there." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, and there's different rail systems. Like there's the Underground, which is in London, and then there's the British rail system, which kind of connects into London.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to my time in London eventually. Yeah. Whenever Nicole feels like she's ready to take me over there, I told him, like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, you really enjoy it. Europe's good. I mean, I've had a lot of trips I've gone to Europe. I haven't gone since I got sick, but because I switched out of an international job role at that point. So,
okay.
But yeah, I liked going on these trips because I'd stay an extra weekend or something like that. But but I had I still get plenty of opportunity to travel with cigars, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
Which it's primarily all of our travel right now. I think as time goes on, it won't be as much of that. Just but there's just certain things that we need to go and see and do that are not necessarily an every year thing. That as we do them, but
and it gets tougher because you can't. Some of these are really good events and stuff, and you can't do them all every year.
No, you can't.
And you can't. And some in 2023 are going to fall off this year. Not because I don't want to go, but it's finite time and finite money.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There's a cigar trip that we'll be taking soon.
I'm taking another cigar trip after early next year too. I've already I'm about to confirm that Monday.
We got one more this year, and I'm not going to say much about it, but and then next year we got the trade shows. We have there's a couple of other small things we may or may not go to.
Yeah.
But I think that's it for next year, unless another like a factory kind of thing happens. It comes up and we can go. We don't have anything like that planned, but those things pop up.
Yeah.
So as of right now, no. But that would be like really the only thing that like could come up that might add to the list. But other than that, yeah, it's going to be a simpler year next year, I think. Just because it's just the other thing too, Nicole and I talked about, it's like we haven't taken really any trips that are non-cigar related, and like we're kind of due for that. We also have to take our honeymoon, which is going to be. I'm not going to say where that's going to be. Because I want to keep that for us, but it's it's another thing we're gonna do and next year, and so like that's why like going to England was such a big thing, because it's like it's like a first like major trip we could take that's like not gonna have anything to do with cigars. I mean, we'll do cigars on the trip, but it's not why we're going. So
yeah, we do the family vacation in Florida in May. It's typically what we do. And then this year I had my trips to New York. Unfortunately, we really want vacation. And that was our first time back in New York since the pandemic. So we're due to go back to New York next year. We're not going up for Christmas this year though. So kind of bummed on that, but it's part of just too difficult. It's very difficult my day job to go up there at the end of the year because I'm pretty busy in December.
right.
So, but I do have the Mexico trip. I have the trip to go to Minnesota in January, and I'm going to go to Nicaragua most likely in January for the festival. So
nice.
I haven't finalized the festival one yet, but I'm probably going to confirm it Monday. So I'm going to have a pretty busy travel, and then I got to figure out what Pro Cigar is going to be. That's the next one.
Yeah, Pro Cigar is another one that I think we.
It's expensive though to do it without like getting invited.
Well, it's one of those that it's on our list, but just time-wise, how it falls for us next year, I don't think it's going to work. But the year after that, I think is when we're going to make a
Yeah.
decision, depending on
Yeah.
what schedule looks like, is whether we'll go or not. I don't. I just
Yeah.
we can go. I just don't want to go because it would be a lot of traveling in a short amount of time, and it's just physically I don't want to deal with it.
It's yeah, I would agree with you on that, and you will go. I mean,
Yeah.
and I love the festival, but to be honest with you, it's like if the nightlife's a tough on me down there, just because it's you get tired, and get older, um, so I don't know what's happened. I don't know what my status is for Pro Cigar yet or TPA. PCA is in the books, so I already just renewed already my membership, so.
Yeah, that's
That's in the books. That's in the books already. So, and we talked as a team, and our main team focus is PCA next year.
Excuse me. Sorry.
No, they're good. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much where we're at. I mean we're going to do TPE, but I think this year's TPE is going to be one of those there's going to be a lot of looking around, and then just paying attention after it's over to see what the industry feels about it, and then kind of go from there for 2024. Because I don't know.
If I go, it's going to be to hang out with you with all the guys. I mean that's going to be the main reason if I go. It's going to be more social.
Yeah.
It's not going to be to cover. I'm not because we're not. It's to do the amount of video that we did, half a terabyte of video that we shot at PCA. I can't justify the cost in doing that for TP because there's just not enough new product. And if I do all these interviews, it's like I don't know. It's not for me. It's not the same, and you don't have the same stakeholders there or anything like that. So I just don't feel it's worth sending 4 guys out there. I mean,
there are more brands.
Gonna
There are more brands that are going to be there that haven't been there. Most notably, Arturo Fuente will actually be going to TPE this time.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying it's because like this groundbreaking stuff, but I'm just saying like
I don't know
what I found interesting was that there are more brands this year than there were before, and I was like, that's interesting.
But again, I love Arturo Fuente. How hard is it to get Carlito to get time with him at a trade show?
I mean, he's a very popular guy.
Of course, and he can't walk. The guy can't walk 5 feet. I mean, so. And I got great time with Carlito one-on-one, but not to shoot video or anything like that. So, but I think, like I said, if I go, it's going to be more for a social interaction rather than cover it. I'll throw a couple of articles out there if TP comps us and stuff like that. But I'm not shooting half a terabyte of video either. And then we have to work through all that afterwards, which is, you saw how much work you've gone through it. You know how much work is post-production.
Yep.
And it doesn't get the traffic on PCA's slowest day. So I'm not knocking TPE. Like people think the time I went to TPE, I had a great experience there. I just couldn't go the last couple of years. So, and I may not be able to go this year because of Pro Cigar.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. It's definitely on the watch list, right? One of the things I know you wanted to talk about tonight was the price increases with certain folks and how it may be related to the Cuban price increases, specifically with Cohiba and Trinidad.
Yep.
I'll let you kind of start that off.
Yeah, so this was a little bit, we hit on this with KMA, but I thought it would be a good topic to expand on here. We talked, let's go back a few shows ago, we talked about Davidoff doing a price increase, right? And we noticed that in particular, and now since then it's become much more widely known, that there's been some significant price increases on some lines, not across the whole board, right? But there's been some significant price increases, right? Fast forward to this week, and Davidoff basically stuff has started leaking out on the Year of the Rabbit. There wasn't anything sent to the media on it, right? But retailers are getting information on this. It's on the Davidoff website where you can order it. And the Year of the Rabbit is being priced at $50 a cigar, right? And
what was Year of the Tiger, like 40, 45?
42.
42.
right? So if you go back, the first big release of this Chinese zodiac series was Year of the Snake in 2012. So it's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And that cigar went for $31. And
Yep.
we all thought that was, wow, Davidoff's hitting the $30 mark for this release. They're insane. One of the best Davidoff's ever done. Now we're hitting into $50 territory, right? And I'll be honest, since the Year of the Snake, I don't think anything's come close to that in the Chinese. But these have been popular cigars. Davidoff sells them out, right? This year, the price jumped significantly. I mean, it jumped to $50, right? And you just gotta wonder, well, what's driving that $50 increase? Is Davidoff doing it to? And I think the net is there's demand for it. There's
Yeah,
demand.
I remember
Those
buying a
cigars sell out
box.
every year.
I bought a box
Yeah,
of the Year of the Rats a couple years ago, and I think I paid $3.99 for it.
yeah. Look,
10
and by the
count
way,
box.
it's a beautiful. You're getting a great. Some of them have like Snake was an epic cigar, but they've been for the most part solid cigars and collectible cigars. So I'm
Sure.
not knocking the other ones, right? Snake was just like an all timer, right? How good it was.
I think the Tiger was pretty good. I never had the original
I
Snake.
did not like the Tiger was my least favorite of the. I thought the
Really?
concept was great. I just thought the blend was blah, right?
Okay.
But it sold out, okay. And I started thinking like, why is Davidoff doing this right now? And I go back to the Cohiba discussion we had, and Cohiba, is clearly been. They're doing this because they want to solidify their position as a high-end luxury brand. Namely, they have the demand for it, but they want to be in the same sentence, I think, as a Rolex watch. That type of, those types of cigars. They want to be the Rolls Royce of the cigar industry, right?
Sure.
And I think Davidoff's sitting there and saying, well, why is Habanos gonna get to do this? Why we can't sit back and let Habanos do this? We're Davidoff, right? We are a luxury brand. We've been a luxury brand.
Swiss brand.
The Swiss brand, yeah. So I think there's a little bit of that to say, let's solidify. And I think Cohiba did the same thing in the U.S. already with the Spectre, right? But I think this is being driven. I think this is being driven that they want to make sure that that Davidoff name is synonymous with luxury. And I think and they have the demand to do it, and that's why they're doing it. So that's what I wanted to put out there because I think that's what's going on here. I don't think they're trying to gouge. I don't think they're trying to gouge the public or anything like that. I think they're playing to a segment that they know they can play to right now.
Davidoff is one of those brands that I see this happening easily, makes sense. The way that they market, especially a white label, right? Yeah. I mean, it's an upscale brand, it's an ultra premium brand. Swiss-made brand, a lot of Swiss
and worthy
companies,
of it, and very worthy of it. Yeah, very
worthy of it. They've been around a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like they're coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. I can see them doing that. I can see why they're doing that. Davidoff is one of those brands that's not Cuban, that's still big globally. They used to be a Cuban brand, but now they're not. But they're still worldwide. That Davidoff white label is still smoked as commonly as anything that Habanos makes, outside the United States. So
absolutely.
it's easy, like you said, it's easy to see where on a global scale, when you look at those two companies, it makes sense for them to kind of mirror each other.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to say like, I don't know, give me a good example. Someone else, it'd be like, well, I mean,
well, let's just go within Davidoff. Camacho. You're not gonna make a $30 Camacho. That makes no sense.
no.
Camacho is more the blue collar brand. So you keep Camacho as you have Camacho makes some great cigars. You keep Camacho as the blue collar brand, and now what they've done with Zeno. I think Zeno has been their big surprise. That Zeno Nicaragua for them. Good cigar under $7, and they have segments. They have brands they can play to those segments, but don't cheapen the They don't. I think anyway. I like that they're not cheapening the Davidoff white label or black label one bit. I like what they're doing with that.
Yeah, I mean, when it first came out, so in terms of the price increases too, I know that someone had messaged me and was like, "Oh, did you hear about Davidoff? They're going up 20% across the board." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I talked to a representative from Davidoff who I know, and I said, "Hey, can you clarify the specifics of your price increases?" and he said there is an increase. They're not all 20%. I believe the Winston Churchill line got a 20% increase. And he said it was a few other things, but the majority of stuff was like a 3 to 5% increase, and there was some that were a little bit more, some that were a little less. But
Yep.
he's like specific things went up 20%. And I think we talked about this a couple shows ago.
Yeah, but I think there's something driving that one. I think
Yes.
that and Abe pointed it out. Winston Churchill is a licensed brand.
Mhm.
Davidoff just doesn't do it because they like him. I mean,
Mhm.
the Churchills are getting paid on it, and I'm sure that licensing played into this a lot.
That would make sense. I think
Yeah,
that's
that
part
would
of
make
it.
a lot of sense. And again, I don't know the details of the licensing agreement, but I think it's safe to say that that's what's going on there.
And then you look at, you mentioned the Zodiac series, right?
Yeah.
That's a very, very popular series for a lot of brands, but Davidoff is one of them that's very popular. So when they come out with something like that, that's a global release too, not just a U.S. release. It's something that people it's something that people they always sell out, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, all right, well, let's just keep raising the price and see where it stops. People are coming out and getting this thing right off the bat. Well, how much money can we make off of this thing?
It's you're right. I think that is playing a lot to it. And the thing is, those cigars are not. I don't think were ever meant to be everyday smokes. Okay,
No.
to begin with.
No.
I think now they're taking this into this, like I said, this realm where you can argue that for an annual limited edition series, this is one of the most premium ones out there right now, if not the most premium one. Can you think about another annual limited that's more expensive or more premium than this? I can't. So I think they're protecting. I think they're protecting what that is. It's not a lot of cigars. They're not targeting this for the everyday smoker, and I think it's a different realm.
Don't forget, this is also the same company that makes a $500 cigar.
Yeah,
MSRP.
They make a $500 cigar. They make a $75 cigar. They make a $100 cigar.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So and people say, well, that's insane. I mean, if you look at certain cars and watches, there's a market. I call it the Rob Report market, right?
Mm-hmm.
With that Rob Report, it's uber luxury. I should say uber luxury. Jeremiah's doing that right now with the Mirafel cigars. He's playing to a segment there, and you know what? There's been some competition right now, so I think they're protecting this a little for that segment where it doesn't get cheapened. I think so. I think there's some. It stinks for people maybe who want to smoke these cigars, but I think there's a business reason they're doing this.
I think so too. I think part of it is, well, first of all, prices of cigars and tobacco is going to go up. This year,
I'm
next
sure they're
year,
anticipating that or absorbing it already. Yeah.
There's global, general inflation, which is also playing into that too.
Yep.
So you do have that. So you have to put that on the table because that is happening regardless, everywhere, no matter what.
And it's cutting into their profit margins. Totally cutting into their profit margins.
Yes. So there is that. You can't rule that out. That is definitely a large percentage of a lot of these price increases. But to your point, I don't think many people realize this because I don't think it was covered as much as I think some people think it was. But Habanos was owned, half of it was owned by Altadis.
Yep.
And that half was sold a few years ago. I think 2019, 2020.
Yep.
The other half of that ownership stake went to China.
That half went to China, yep.
So,
supposedly, but I think everyone believes it's China, yeah.
Yes. So then you look at, the Chinese market. Chinese market is a market where there's a lot of luxury items that are desirable in China, and there's a huge market for that over there and stuff like that. Cuban cigars, especially Cohiba, Trinidad, the top tier names, very desired cigars everywhere, especially in those markets. And then earlier this year, Habanos puts out a statement saying that they're going to raise the prices, and the prices are going to be based on the Hong Kong market.
Yep.
So then there was that, and we were told that increases with brands like Cohiba and Trinidad would go up as much as 300%. I don't think they all went up that much. I think they all went up but those two being their most premier brands saw
And
that
look,
dramatic increase.
Yep, the Cohiba 55, which is again a limited release.
Yep.
They know it's going to be limited, and they know there's going to be a demand for it. They're taking advantage of that right now.
They are.
It's basic economics, yeah.
And they know people are going to get it. And in China, it's something we've been talking about. China's been taking a lot of the Cuban cigar supply, and there's a demand over there for that. So there's a market for that. Then, you hear this news. Well, there's this other half of the ownership, is, pretty much, it's kind of well known at this point. To people like us, I guess, who talk about it, but it's in China, and now all of a sudden the pricing model is based off of Hong Kong, and I remember I went, the last year or so, some of those online sites like iHabanos and Pure Express that sell Cubans online, they had their prices posted, and I remember looking at a box of Cohiba Robustos, 25, and it was like, I think it was like $5 or $6.99 for the box, right? Which is a lot for a box of Robustos, but it's Cohiba. After that price went into effect, I noticed that all those online places got a full restocking of Cohibas. They hadn't had anything for a while. And all of a sudden, they got this influx. They had all the sizes again, but the prices had changed. Now Cohiba Robustos, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say they go for like $1,700.
I'm not sure, but it's not cheap. Yeah.
Maybe even more. And I was like, holy shit. That's a lot. And you know what I said? That's a lot for cigars that, especially those of us in the U.S. who don't smoke as many of them, who smoke a lot of what the outside the U.S. people call New World stuff, from Nicaragua and the DR and Honduras. And, there's a lot of issues with those cigars sometimes. So you buy a box of 25, and there's a good amount of them that you're going to be like, this cigar sucked because it was too tight. It was plugged.
Yep.
It didn't burn right. It fell apart because their quality control in Cuba with the Cuban cigars is not what it's been before. It's not great. So it's like, regardless if you have the money to spend or not, I'm trying to figure out, how do you spend $2,000 on a box of cigars where half of them might be trash?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, again, I think it goes down to the fact that the market, like the people who are buying in this market, are probably completely oblivious to some of the things we are, as you want to use the word connoisseurs or quasi connoisseurs or whatever.
Yeah.
That they'll overlook things that we won't, and they'll smoke anything because it's branded a certain way. So I think that's where it comes down to. I think we would look at it in a different eye with that. I think that's how they're getting away with it. Now, I'll say this, like Davidoff with Oro Blanco is one of the greatest cigars I've ever had. Steve Saka's Unicorn, $100, the best cigar Saka's ever done. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, some of these companies have really justified these price points. Other ones have not.
And
I think it's fair I think it's fair. Habanos has been disappointing with their quality control lately, and I think they're getting away with it because especially for people who can't get those cigars, it's forbidden fruit.
Yeah, people are
so
getting
you
them
want something you can't get.
Right. Regardless if you're gonna have a good experience or not. Nicole brought some Cohiba Siglo 5s back from the United Kingdom earlier this year, and we had a couple of them, and I remember being like, tobacco's all right.
Yeah.
But they both sucked to smoke. I mean, it was like sucking through.
I do have I do have the Cohiba
straw.
55. I do have the Cohiba 55 scheduled for review in November, by the way.
I'd be very interested to see what you say.
I have the cigar. Yeah. Nick Sirius brought them back from the launch, so I will be reviewing that. And I'm saying it's gonna be a Thanksgiving week. It will be Thanksgiving week probably is when that will come out.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I haven't smoked them yet, but that will probably be early November. I'll go through those.
And it's funny that you bring this topic up because we've talked a little bit about different parts of this on previous shows, but you're right. Now when you start to look at, well, how are their competitors responding to this? Well, Davidoff is arguably probably the closest non-Cuban company to that market and profile and whatever you want to call it. And here it is. Now we see them trying to do it, and I think they're another company that they probably will be successful with the most part because I think there is still a demand for, the high-end Davidoff.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
saw Jeremiah. With his
Jeremiah.
now Jeremiah the Marifels, they've been around a long time. The cigars that he's releasing, I mean, these are new lines, but some of them carry a $93 price point.
Yeah, and they do, and I'm gonna be really interested to see. This is where I think it's a little. And first of all, I love what Jeremiah is doing. By the way,
Yeah, and that's not a negative connotation either. We haven't
the
smoked them. We don't know anything about
yeah.
them. And Jeremiah, he's, like I said, the family's been around too. It's not like they're just coming out of nowhere. Like,
Yeah.
perfect example, just to get it out there, Coop, El
Uh-huh.
Septimo. El Septimo's a new brand to the U.S. Really.
I think that was my next point. I think El Septimo is driving some of this stuff too.
I think that's a part of it.
I think they made a big impression at that trade show. Whether you like their cigars or not, they had a presence there, and they positioned themselves as a luxury alternative. And again, if you're Davidoff and you're sitting there and you're like, "We're Davidoff," like again, we're Davidoff. If you're Selected Tobacco, right? Like Selected Tobacco had the best booths. I think Selected Tobacco had the best luxury booths I ever saw at a trade show this year.
It was like a Rolls-Royce dealership.
And I'm saying the luxury brands. Probably Davidoff's had some great ones. So I don't want to say that, but yeah, it was a Rolls-Royce dealership. It was this year. And that's not knocking the other booths. Some of them are just focused on more everyday cigars, but they're beautiful booths. So I mean, I look at this and I look at what El Septimo's doing, and you got to be saying like, man, I've got tobacco. We got tobacco. We got the talent. We could do this. I think Jeremiah's looking at the same thing. The one thing that I think is a little. The one thing I haven't asked Jeremiah this question, so I want to, so Jeremiah's become a very visible person over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing the weekly podcast. He's much more out there in terms of interacting with him. But most of the people who are interacting and watching these shows are not the audience for that cigar. So the question becomes, how do you build this? How do you build that's going to take a little more work, I think, to build, though. I think you're really going to have to tell the Mirafel story, and you're really going to have to work with retailers on that piece. So that's where Reinhardt comes in. I think he'll do a good job with that.
I think so, too.
Yeah, and if you notice, this is, again, I pick on Aficionado a lot, but Jeremiah did those videos and stuff for Aficionado. That was smart. That was smart marketing he did with that. That was smart how he did that because, like it or not, that's the channel you did need to go with something like this. I totally get that. It's not, it's not Chris's cigar blog or something. It's not the place to go do that. You need to do that with Cigar Aficionado that has a reach into these other areas. So that one I totally get. But guess what? They've always shared the information with us too. So I don't have to chase the information down. So I'm okay with that. I think there's a good reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was going to add too, you look at Atabey and Byron from Selected, and you got to say, well, I'm gonna assume those prices are gonna have to go up at some point. I mean, they've stayed pretty close to the same the last couple of years. I mean, they haven't really dramatically changed. But one thing I noticed is when Alfonso went on sale, the prices of the Alfonso were much higher than the average prices on Atabey and Byron.
And I bet there's gonna be a second Alfonso line that comes out. I bet they'll be higher than that original Alfonso.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I think that's so. I kind of see that because, keep your base with the original Atabey and Byron's. You know what I mean? Then you can kind of build this other brand up. Alfonso, I think it's a good. I think it was a smart marketing for that space. I mean, I look at where this brand came in 10 years. These Selected Tobacco brands, and it's amazing the job that we've seen that company do with United and with Oliver. We said this enough, and Oliver works with a lot of these retailers, and they get these special high-end humidors and stuff. And guess what? That keeps in the retailers that have these or more luxury type of shops. You have You have a brand that's now well known that you're getting something special with. I like that approach. I like the approach they've taken with that. It's smart.
They started sponsoring lounges. There's an Atabey lounge and there's a Byron lounge.
Yep. Yeah, Nielsen's been to the. He's already been to the Byron lounge because he lives near it.
And I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this year or sometime next year you don't hear that there's maybe more. Because I have to look at it like, well, I mean, if they're doing that and and those brands are continuing to grow. Like, why
Yeah.
wouldn't they open more if they can do more, right? I mean, if
Yeah.
you have 2,
Mhm.
like, it's
Yeah.
just a basic chain of thought. Like,
Yeah.
why not, do more, which I'm sure they will. Then
Yeah.
you have to look at, okay, so El Septimo again, right? They're another one of those brands that they've said, it's been on record that they want to compete fiercely with their other ultra luxury counterparts like Davidoff and Selected Tobacco, and even I'm sure Habanos is on that list too. Not so much here in the U.S., but on an international scale. So they also recently announced they want to open. We talked about this like on the last show, the show before.
Yeah.
They're planning to open 30 El Septimo lounges in the United States. So it's like, all right, well,
So, and I think I would mention this too. They're missing a key ingredient. Okay, they're missing the story. Okay, that's what they're missing. They're saying they're coming out with these premium ultra cigars, but Davidoff's got a story behind it. Selected Tobacco's got a story behind it. Um, Habanos has a story. Okay, Select El Septimo does not have that yet, and I think this is where they're going to struggle with this because this is an industry about families and stories and stuff like that.
and to your point, like you just said, when it comes to Jeremiah's stuff, like it may be a new brand and stuff, but he has a story to tell.
For 2 years, they've been promoting the Mirafel brand with, Mirafel Cameroon and all that. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a brilliant. And first of all, I think it's been a win-win for everybody because Jeremiah shared so much on our shows and everything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's been good, but there's a story behind these things that especially Jeremiah's is a powerful story. It's all tied to the family history.
And he's a good storyteller.
He's an unbelievable story. Loomis and I were talking about when we had him on the show. We just let him go because
Yeah.
he just there was nothing we could do that was going to top what he was talking about. And you know what? It people connected with it. Now, if someone walked in and heard our shows, yours or my show, and goes in and wants to buy an $80 cigar, they're gonna like, yeah, I heard this guy's story. El Septimo does not have that yet. I don't care what they do. There's got to be this is an industry about storytelling. If I was Zaya, that would be the thing I'd be working on is get your story about what's going on in Costa Rica, build a story around it. I'm sure there is one, but you got to build it. You just can't go out there and say, hey, we're ultra premium because we made this lighter that's a $5 million lighter,
Yeah, I know, right? I mean,
good
look.
for him, by the way. Good for him. He created a lot of interest in everything, but you're going to build your brand. You need to build that brand around the way we've done things in this industry for 100 years.
And when it comes to Septimo, like, I don't think that. I think there's been a lot of skepticism with them just because of, like you said, like there's not really a story, and they kind of just popped up, and it was like, oh, well, who are they? And they had,
Right.
cigars at really high price points, so it's like, well, that's an interesting piece to this. Like, so where, and then there's like people trying to figure out, well, how does that fit into? But at the same time, I mean, he's got a lot into it, and he's got stuff. I think there's going to be some changes that he'll make as time goes on, and they
Yep.
figure stuff out, and
Right.
and I think that's fine. And I think that what I'm trying to say is I think there is a place for El Septimo in the industry. I think that they will.
I do too. And I
figure-
think they can.
I think they'll whittle it down a little bit and then they'll just kind of
They've-
shape it. But I think that they have something there.
They've created interest.
Yeah.
I think. Look, I'm looking at my top stories of the year. El Septimo is one of the top stories this year. I don't care what anyone says. Doesn't matter about the cigars or anything. They're putting a lot of money. They're trying to change things. But I look at, like, again, when I go back and look at Davidoff, it's the incredible legacy of Zeno Davidoff. Now going and working with the Kellners, and stuff. It was a marriage, and there's a big story behind that. I'm making cigars in Costa Rica, which I've been to Costa Rica. I've been to the factories there in Costa Rica. It's very boutique and small, is what I'm just gonna tell you.
Mhm.
So it's not the Davidoff factory. They're great. They do some great stuff in Costa Rica, some unique things with fermentation, but it's not Davidoff, is what I'm gonna say.
I think that it's hard too because when you talk about Habanos, Davidoff, I mean, you're talking about names that have been around for a very long time. Now,
Yeah.
they have a high demand, they have high price points, they're very globally recognized. I mean, I mean, everybody knows the black and yellow Cohiba band. I mean,
Yeah.
it's everybody knows that.
Yeah.
It's been
Yep.
mimicked by other things. Like everyone knows what that is.
Yep.
So it's hard when you're trying to come into the market and play on their level.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, people are going to come out with ultra luxury brands, whatever. Like, and that's great for business and it's great for whatever. But, and I don't think people shouldn't do it. They should.
Yeah.
But it's definitely harder to come out and compete with companies like that versus companies like Espinosa, LFD. Even Drew Estate. I mean, Drew Estate's a big company, but their products are not like. You're not talking. Like
It's
price
still
point
yeah.
you know what I'm getting at. It's not
still,
like going against Davidoff at $30 a stick. Even some of the Padron stuff is up there. I mean, Padron's not the company that's recognized like Davidoff and Habanos, but it's definitely hard to come out into the market and sell a cigar for that much, knowing that you're going to compete with people. It's like, well, I mean, if I'm going to spend $30, I'm going to buy Davidoff because everybody knows Davidoff. Like that's like the unmuttered thing that someone would say, well, I know Davidoff. I'll give them $30 because they've been around. I know them. And it's like that's a natural way that the average consumer would think. Like, I don't know you, but I know Davidoff, so I feel safe spending the money because they're afraid. Like, well, what if I buy it and I don't like it? So I mean, it's the marketing mentality too, right? So you have to look at the consumer who walks into the shop and is like, I want to get something expensive, but like. I don't know El Septimo. I don't really know about Atabey Byron, but like I know Davidoff, and like that's the stigma, right?
And you know what? Selected Tobacco has been doing a great job at this over the last 10 years.
They have.
The story, it's Nelson's story, his passion for aging and his aging techniques, and Dave used to tell that story on the Cigar Authority. Oliver's taking it out to the masses. And oh, by the way, Oliver has United Cigars, and he's got these value price things, and they do a good job of keeping different lanes. But
they've done a great
Selected
job.
Tobacco has done a good. So they have the story. And again, if I my question, if I get a chance, I didn't get a chance to interview Zyder on the KMA piece, but that would have been my question. What is your story because this is what it's worked. This is what's worked. Now maybe he'll prove everyone wrong and say you don't need a story. That'll be interesting to see. I just don't see it happening. I do see him spending money with Cigar Aficionado now, Zaya, so that's another one to watch. See, I keep a close eye on his interaction with Cigar Aficionado over the next couple of years. Does he get ratings and stuff? This is going to be something to watch.
Let me ask you a question. Someone said this to me recently, and I don't know. I'll be honest with you. If it seems like a stupid question, maybe it is. I've never really paid a lot of attention to it. Is it true CA doesn't review any cigars that have anything undisclosed?
I believe they don't rank them.
Because someone said that to me, and I was like, I never really paid attention.
You're right. I don't think they. I think that could be true, though. I think that isn't it. But there have been companies that have disclosed it to them.
Because there's a good amount of cigars that I mean, I don't always read the magazine. But when I do, I look at the reviews. I see what was reviewed, what was given, this and that. And there's certain brands, for example, like Atabey Byron, I've never seen reviewed in CA.
I think that has something to do with it. And I'm just thinking about some of the other projects like Andre Farkas, smaller brands that like everything he talks to them about is disclosed. And I've also noticed Selected Tobacco has been a little more open about the blends in the last couple of years. So, there's some of the stuff you kind of look at the last press release on the Byron. There was a lot more details of the Byron blend that we had never heard before.
Yeah, it's
the Poemas.
It's
I think
Peruvian, Ecuadorian, and Nicaraguan.
But I think beforehand it was always undisclosed for many years. I mean, I went back to some, yeah. So, I think I think they recognize that maybe you have to do some of that.
Why do you think companies do the undisclosed?
I think they're really worried
about
because they're worried about being copied with the blend.
So it's more of a copy thing. It's not because they're trying to hide anything.
No, well, what happens is this, and I think there's something to that second part. So if you're you come out with this cigar, right, and you're using the rare tobacco, that's your secret sauce, right, and you're getting a supply. You don't want someone else trying to track down where that supply is coming from.
Right.
So by undisclosing it, you kind of shut the door completely on it, and you force someone to kind of guess what it is, it can be done. But I think that was a lot of what that had, what drove that, some of that. So I think it's a combination of both things. I think it's copycat, but the other thing is, if that tobacco is truly a scarce tobacco, they don't want someone else trying to grab it and coming in there and maybe if it's a small company, they don't want a bigger company coming in and trying to grab it.
Yeah, I mean that's true too. I think you're right
I've
though.
heard that there's a third theory. There's the third theory, which
What's
is it's
that?
forbidden tobacco. It's forbidden tobacco.
Oh well,
Well, we won't go there, okay? But that's the third theory. It's forbidden tobacco. So
yeah, maybe.
maybe I'm just saying that that's another one that's been out there, and I've heard a dozen companies like accused of using forbidden tobacco, and there's no proof, so I'm not gonna ever go there and say, oh, this person's because I have no proof,
Yeah,
and there's no guarantee what they're disclosing is even the truth. That's the other thing. That's kind of like you can make up Ecuadorian, but Paraguayan or whatever. You can say whatever you want. Like there's no way to validate that stuff.
that's true too. And I think
Yeah,
I think you're right. I think some of these companies are feeling like they have to disclose some stuff to get a little more recognition. And
yeah,
I think some of them will begin to. I don't think they're all just going to do it, but I think you're
yeah,
right. Like some of them,
yeah, yeah,
um, you know, and and that could change. You start getting reviews by some
yeah,
people like
yeah,
that, and you, oh, okay, now they start getting reviews, you getting high rankings, and you get more people looking at the brand and this and that. So,
yep, yep,
yeah, maybe, and that could be part of it too. That might be something that changes.
yeah.
But no, I figured I'd bring that up because I think like Al Septimo's another one. I think he's undisclosed on most of his stuff.
He does, but I guarantee you, if they told, and I don't know what the discussions are, but I could see him. See, it's like, look, you got to tell us what this is. He's like, yeah, I'll disclose this, and this. Whether it's true or not, there's no way for us to validate. You just have to take it that they're telling the truth. So,
Right.
but I think El Septimo's key is going to be aficionado. They are going to have to work that angle more to get because if the goals they want to do, there is, like I said, we were talking about this in the green room. There is a reason why you do go to Cigar Aficionado sometimes.
It's true.
Some stuff I don't. Some stuff I just totally don't get. But that's another story.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We've talked about it before, right? Um, Look, they've been around a long time. They're probably the most recognized piece of media in the cigar industry. I mean, you can't argue that. You can't fight that.
Yeah.
They're big. Their magazines are on almost every magazine shelf.
Yeah.
You know, I get it, and they are a big deal. But I think sometimes there's certain things that happen that I guess I wish didn't because
Yeah.
it's just it's kind of like, well, I think it makes others feel in the media. I think it just makes others feel like, well,
We're scraps.
yeah, and it's like, oh, we've done this and we've done this, and
Yeah.
then all
We're
of a sudden
scraps.
something comes out and it's like, well, that's for CA though, because it's like,
Yeah.
well, I mean,
Well,
okay,
and I've had some candid conversations. If you're gonna give everything to CA, but then you have the single store release and you're gonna come to me with it, you're gonna get turned down. It's just because one is, I've said it 100 times, single store releases do not pay the bills for Cigar Coop, right? And I'm not willing to do that. You have to bring something to me back for the table. Um, so I mean, so let me. This is a good segue into the other thing I wanted to talk about.
okay,
So Matt, I've had some conversations with you, text messages with you. You've been trying to increase your news coverage. I've noticed, right?
yeah, we're always growing.
Give me an assessment for how well the cigar industry works with media and media relations about communicating information. Give me your assessment, an honest assessment of that, because I feel like I've been the only one kind of pulling on this rope for a while in the media.
Most companies, when you go to them, and you're like, hey, we are whatever. No problem. They put you on the list. They work with you. You ask questions. They answer your questions.
Uh-huh.
I would say the average majority, from what I deal with, is pretty good. Now, having said that, there is a good portion of companies out there that I'm just like, I mean, I don't get it. Like, there's brands that like you, and I know that a lot of the brands that I've had frustrations with, I've told you, and you've had the
Hmm.
same exact problem.
Yes, it's this, and there's lots of different frustrations. Okay,
And it's on
it's
the
not just one.
communication level, and it's like there's one big company that I've been trying to communicate with for months, and actually for the last year, I've been, put in touch with certain people, and I've talked to them, and then it's like, it just falls through your hands like
Yeah.
sand, and it's like, why is this so complicated? Why is it so difficult to get information? Why is it so difficult to get a press release on stuff? And and it's like, even you, like, there's companies that you still don't, you're still not in
I,
with,
I, I
but
told you
then, but
one. I told you one that I still don't get press releases from them, and I see other people get them, and that's because they're not maintaining their. That's because these companies have lists and lists. They have all these lists, and you're not on every list. And what list gets sent to who is the question. What gets sent on what list is the question, and it's frustrating beyond belief when I see that happen. The other problem is they communicate to the retailers first, and then the retailers are calling me asking me about this cigar. And then I'm being told we can't talk about this cigar yet. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Your retailer has all your information. I said, and then you read about it, an exclusive in a print publication next, right? So it's like, well, what are we doing here, guys? Now, I understand there's certain stories that do need to be communicated to the retailers first, right? Price increases, discontinuations are good examples of that, right? Where you don't want your retailer reading about it on Coop or Smokin' Tobacco, right? They should be communicated that for. So I think it's having a communication plan with some of that stuff.
right.
I totally get that, right? You want to be sensitive to that.
Well, can I
But
add something into that?
yeah,
There's actually something that I know that we haven't talked about yet, but I know because I was told Um, so I'm gonna leave some details out, but you're gonna know what I'm talking about. But a manufacturer approached me recently about something that they're doing, and they said that they feel that because of what it is, they need to tell their retailers first. But they wanted my feedback on how they should roll that out with the media.
and they already talked to us about what it is.
Yes.
So look, they've already we're in a know, and we're part of the communication plan, and that's totally fine. That's like, hey, look, we're not just like sidestepping. We're not sidestepping the media on this. Like, we work with you guys, but there's business reasons why they need to do what they're gonna do. Makes 100% sense with that, you know. But yeah, but and this company does good. This company I would put in the upper tier of media relations.
I would
They're
say so.
really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
They're really, really good as far as that. They've been great to
And
deal with.
anytime you do need information or you get a phone call away, they always answer.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you whatever you need to
Yep.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, there's some companies that won't do press releases, but if you reach out to them, they are like an open book. Um, and okay, I'm fine with that. The problem is, if someone gets to them first, then I'm not really interested in the story. That's the drawback. So I won't probably cover it because it's just at that point, someone's beating me by a mile with that. I'm like, well, what am I going to spend? So I have to assess how big the story is at that point, if it's worth doing.
There's a few brands out there that I actually enjoy very well on a personal note, and the people, who own them, I know and I like a
Yeah.
lot. But they do that, and it's like disappointing because I'm like, dude, I
Yeah.
love the brand too. Like, I want to cover it, I want to promote it, I want to help
Yeah.
you out, but it's like, I don't want to have to go digging for something that someone else probably already got out there, and then it's like you
Yeah.
just said, it's like by the time you put it all together, it's like, is it's already out there, and it's like,
There was one company that went and gave a story to a big print publication, and media started contacting this person, and the person said, I can't talk about it yet. And we went pretty public with this person, calling this guy out to task with it because it was like, and he started defending this, saying, this is good for everybody. And I'm like, how is this good for everybody that you've given an exclusive and you can't talk about this to me? I said, exclusivities, Matt, I tell you this all the time. It's part of doing media. Media brands are going to get exclusives from other media brands. That is
yeah,
not the issue. The issue is when it's held in embargo for 48 hours. That makes absolutely no sense. I don't see what you. I mean, I don't see what you're doing in that case. You can't talk about your own product. That's the part. Like usually, my rule of thumb is I'll ask for a couple of hours max or end of the business day, and that's it. I don't. I'm not looking to stand in anyone's way on stuff, and companies have been great about it, but in my opinion, you don't need to go much further than that. The story's already out there. Why wouldn't why? Because then other guys are going to be like, and I know certain media guys are like, well, I'm not covering that now. Like, why are you sending this to me 48 hours later? I could tell you, and I pretty much, I haven't done that. Well, I haven't cut someone unless again it's selective. Certain companies, if you're not big enough, you're not gonna get the benefit of the doubt with me. If you're a big company, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because you're a big company. I'll give you, I can tell you that, but I know I can ping Carlito and ask him a question and he'll tell me something.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't do, but he's very open. He doesn't have anything to hide with that. But he has but also some of these companies have a relationship with some of these print guys going back before you were born, Matt. So
I get
understand
that
part too. I understand that part too. It's these
like
new
Carlito.
guys like Carlito, right? But Carlito will never deny you access.
No.
Access. Sometimes Carlito will send you on a little Easter egg hunt with it, but he'll make you figure out a few deals. But again, no issues with. That's not what we're talking about. These newer companies who claim that online media is the future and blah blah blah, and then the second they can get a print, like there's people I'm buddies with, right? And all of a sudden I'm reading about new releases on a print publication. I'm like, what the? I mean, really? Now, there's some companies have told me point blank, we're giving this to the print publication first. So that softens the blow a bit. It doesn't excuse it. But I have never seen. I mean, in my opinion, I think the cigar industry as a whole, media relations is poor. It hasn't gotten better. It's gotten worse, if anything, over the last couple of years. And there are some companies that do it very well, and there's other companies I just scratch my head. I'm like, what are you doing? And I think there's this notion that if they do this, they're going to get a good rate, they get a good rating, and they're going to be on an end-of-year list. And I think that's always playing into the mind. I'm like, no, it doesn't need to be that. You're not going to – more companies get burned by that than if anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. And like you said, it's part of doing business, and I understand that part. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any exclusives. It's like I just think that it just could be cleaned up a little bit.
It could totally be cleaned up. A business day is a good example of that. Because then here's my point is I've taken the Charlie approach the last few years is that if it's a big enough story, guess what? I'm going to run with it. And I'll just reference it. And then that'll be that. Rather than wait like a week. And some companies won't even talk to you at all. Because they say, well, we're not going to talk to you. We already did that. I'm like, really?
Yeah,
So,
I've seen that probably one or two times, but
I've seen.
I don't think it happens that much, but it has where you're like, okay, well.
I mean, I'll give you I'll name a name in this case. Jay Cutler released a cigar, right? He gave the story to Aficionado, right? Probably doesn't know to call Cigar Coop or have. I reached out to them a couple of times. I heard nothing. I'm like, really? No response. Hey, just like. Jay Cutler doing a cigar. Say what you want about Jay Cutler. It's still an NFL quarterback. Had a pretty decent career and kind of interested in it. Nothing. I get nothing back on that. I'm like, you're not responding. You're not going to respond back. Respond back to me saying we're not talking to anyone else. No response. I mean, it's just like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. And I'm going to write a book someday of the stories I have on press releases in this industry. It will be when I retire. So, because it will be an absolute shocker, is what I'll say. Some of the excuses and some of the rationale, it's ridiculous.
I want to read that book.
Yeah,
it hasn't even been written yet. I'm like, I want that book.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, I hear what you're saying. I mean,
yeah.
Look, and it happens, and it's going to happen. And, it always goes back to the comment that Carney made not too long ago when he made that comment about it's the cost of doing business.
It's a cost of doing.
And I think
Carney's a good example. We get good communication from Carney. I understand sometimes they go through. Lito knows those guys a long time. I understand that. So
yep.
It's never. But Carney has never denied information to us.
No,
Uh,
and a lot
no.
of the times, I'll just ask him questions on certain things, and he'll tell me. And
Yeah.
or if it's something that can't be publicly said, it's like
Yeah.
I'll just genuinely be interested. So I'll be like, hey, not even just trying to get a story out. I'm just like, hey, I'm just
Right.
curious, but and he'll be like, it's this, but can't say anything about it. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just genuinely interested. I'm not trying
Right.
to get it
Right.
a
Well,
story.
what
Like,
Lito
I
did
just
on
want
your
to
show,
know.
Lito told about the Soleil ahead of time. You put something out there. I don't think it affected anything other. You probably put it out there for the first time that this is coming, and that was a
Yeah,
good
John
job.
John
Lito,
did John didn't even know it was coming. He was like, I was like, did you know that Lito just? He's like, I didn't know. He's like, it's out there though. I'm like, all right. I said,
yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna write it. He's like, I mean, I'm
Like
not
you
gonna
said it
stop you
on a
now.
show.
He's like, I'm
You
not gonna
said it on a
stop
show.
you now. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you said it on a show. And it's just yeah, it's and I was telling you this in the green room before the show. We stopped very early on using our show to make product announcements, right?
yeah,
Because we found that like you ask, hey, what's new? Oh, nothing's new, right? And Matt, it's happened at least 4 times to me in my very early on. Like the next day, there was something in a big print publication, and you just told me there was nothing going on. So I look like a complete idiot, right? So when I started the primetime show very early on, I said those questions will not be answered. And when we do the virtual trade show, we're very clear. If you made a deal with the print publication, we don't really want you on the show because we just don't want you. And that's where the whole teaser free thing actually came from. It's because of those types of things where we just don't want to get burned, like looking like because again, online media tends to be given the prime rib goes to print publications, and the scraps will go to online media. Is what I'll find. That's the way it works, and it's crazy. It's I don't understand. And look,
yeah,
hey, there's only a handful of people who cover news. By the way, there's not a lot of sites that are covering news. There are sites that are republishing press releases, but I think there's other sites. You've been starting to get more into this. It's not just a press release. The Half Wheel, the Dojo guys do some of it. I wouldn't say they're full news guys, but there's not a lot of us that do this.
hmm.
Um, and if you're going on an Instagram live and announcing something, I got to question how important it is if that's the way you're doing it. So, um, it's
It's a good
just
point, I
it's
guess. It's all. I
yeah,
guess it's all in how you present it too. I mean,
it's got to yeah. Now I've been doing this for 12 years, so now I have some street cred. So there are times, but I've had some tough negotiations on stuff with people, and hard conversations. In terms of we'll work with you, but we're not going to be used if you don't get your way with the print publication. So, and look, this industry is a print centric industry. A lot of us a lot of them will support online financially and all stuff, but they still look at the print publication as the number one thing.
I understand it though. I
I
get
do
it.
because again, they have a longer history than me with 12
Right.
years.
I don't doubt, and I don't like. For me, like I don't like. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be that way. Like, that makes sense to me, and I get it. They've been around a long time, and that's been the
Yeah.
medium. And that was, remember, I mean, that was the medium before online was really a thing in
Well,
general. So I mean,
the
like
way
that was how you got your information. I mean, times have
the
changed, so
yeah,
it's different
the
now.
way
But
it the way it was, people knew Cigar Aficionado is a good example because they were the first, right? So I'll name Cigar
what were they
Aficionado in this
90,
case, right?
91 they came out, 92.
91, 92, right? So they had relationships with them, right? So they give them stories. Then other companies would fax stuff to Cigar Aficionado, and they'd just be crossing their fingers that they would get in there with that, right? And then some companies figured out, hey, if we can't get into aficionado, we'll go through the online media route, right? So we see that with the smaller companies. Then what happens? The smaller companies start to grow a bit. Aficionado starts seeing them, or Cigar Journal. I don't want to pick on everyone with aficionado. It's not fair either. But now it's like, well, we want this store. Like you don't need to go to these guys. So suddenly, I'm like invisible. Like I become off the grid. Um, and
They found a new
you
friend
know,
they like better.
they find a new friend they like better, and then they want to come back to me, and I'm like, okay, well, what protection am I getting here? That this won't happen again. Some companies will be honest with me, say, well, guess what? This is how we're doing it. And some companies will not.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things you just have to you take it day by day, you take it
Yeah.
case by case, because
Yep.
again, everyone does it differently too. So it's not this
Yeah.
isn't a general statement for everybody or anyone who does
Yeah.
anything with CA. It's even the people who do stuff with CA first, like they all do it a different way in some respects too. Like um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm getting this network of retailers now who start to feed me information because stuff goes to the retailers first that doesn't make any. Like they're taking, like when they say, "Hey, we're coming out with this cigar and it's shipping this week," right? We're shipping it to retailers this week. The orders have already been placed, right? So that's because the reps have been in there talking about this stuff. So uh, in some cases, it's a verbal discussion, so there's no, there's no pictures or anything. But in other cases, they've been sent emails, and I've seen these emails like, "Hey, order this stuff now and save," like, whoa, we didn't know anything about it. And then we find out 2 weeks later when it's on the shelf. And I've had this discussion with Bear. Bear made a great point. Bear's like, that worked in 1995. We're in a 24/7 news cycle right now. It's a different story right now. You can't operate. You have to change the way you operate.
right.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that, and that's why I said before, like, I understand, like, historically, that's why it's been the way it is, and
Yeah.
in some respects, like, I get it. Like, that's just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that there are some subtle tweaks that could be made because times have changed, and I think it just would be better for everybody.
Yeah.
Because of that, it's a 24-hour news thing now. It's not just when someone picks up the
Yeah.
magazine. It's
Yeah.
at any time you can go online and read it. You know what I mean? Like, anyone can read it. It's not like you have to go
So
buy the magazine. You can just go online and read it at any time. So
here's the most amazing thing. So Half Wheel, who we can argue is easily the number one news source, right? I mean, look, my own team reads Half Wheel before Coop. Okay, so and I've had this
I
discussion.
know, I know.
That I call them the Half Wheel Fanboy Club, right?
You get very
And
upset. I know.
okay, at least see if it's on Coop first before you share in a Half Wheel article, right? Which sometimes it is, right? I've done that to you. Okay, but that's not the issue here. The issue is Half Wheel has been they're bulldogs. No one's more aggressive at pursuing news than they are in any one in the cigar industry. I'm going to be transparent on that. They have not been able to change this behavior. They have not. I mean, with all the
Yeah,
effort they put into,
and they're good at
they
what they
have
do.
not been. No, I mean they go as far as saying, "Hey, our phone call wasn't returned," and I've now started to do some of that, by the way. And I'm gonna have Charlie coming on the show next month, and I'm gonna be talking to him about it. But yeah, I've started to do some of it, but it doesn't move the needle. Unfortunately, it just pisses people off, right?
I know.
But so I'm a little careful how I do that. But it does not move the needle. They have not been able to change the behavior. If anyone was going to change that behavior, it's them, and they haven't been able to do it. And that's saying that that's the hole that print media has right now.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, Charlie and Brooks and Patrick and everyone that's over there at Half Wheel, they do a great job.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
they 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 do it full time too, which is something that a
Yeah.
lot of people don't realize. Like, they do this. That's what they do. That's
They,
that's
they,
that
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 that's
is their
their
job.
that's their
know?
business, and they built a very respectable and I think their product has really changed over the years. I used to think they were more like TMZ um, back in like 10 years ago, but now it's very different. It's a matured model. It's a solid model they have, and they do a very good job at that. But um, and there's some stuff they don't get all the time first, and other times they do because they've been aggressive, but they have not been able to, like the fact that they can't move the needle on that is saying a lot to me. That I don't know if anything will ever change the behavior in my lifetime at this point. And I know we had a conversation about this right before the show, and it's not totally inaccurate.
Yeah, no,
I can push it with some of the newer guys getting in. Though I can push that a little and tell them, well, you're not going to get covered because at this point
the
because you're
new.
not big enough.
You talk about the newer brands.
The small new brands that that do that, right? And there's small brands that I'm like, well, I can skip that story and not miss a beat.
Small brands that are run by people who have been around for a long time, or just new brands in general.
Both,
Hmm.
both. Where I could say, well, we're not going to cover it. Like, and I think I mentioned I changed. I tried a few years ago, and I mentioned this. I went after the shop exclusive market, and I called it the biggest blunder I ever made in Cigar Coop. My numbers went down one year. And I think I was spending time on cycles with stuff that just wasn't getting traffic. And I started doing analytics and looking at it. And now, hey, you'll get your store exclusive on Coop, but you got to provide the information the same day. And if I see it somewhere else, if I see it on your website, if we're not part of the story, I'll just skip it and spend time on something like a Fuente story, which is going to get me much more traffic. Or a Padron story or an Altadis story. I mean, there's an Alec Bradley story. There's different Drew Estate. There's different things I'll spend that time on rather than chase down this single store release stuff, which is So I made that decision, and I took a lot of grief for it, but I think it turned my numbers around tremendously when I started focusing on that at this point. So I know what I could skip a story on. I know what I don't need to skip a story on.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with it. I've had some of that practice myself. There's things that I covered that I know you don't, but at the same time, like.
But that's okay. There's things I covered that you don't, right?
Right.
That's okay. That's this is the other thing, right? So Riste from JSK Cigars was so mad that I didn't cover the munchies, right? And he started calling me fake news and guess what? The Constitution gives me the right to not publish something, right? It gives me that protection that I don't have to publish that. And if I don't think it fits into my model, it's not getting covered.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple as that. And I have that right to do that. He has a right to pull all press release information from me at that point. He has every right to cut me off, but so be it, and I won't cover it,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever had anything like that happen before. I mean, I try to cover everything that I can for the most part too. So if I don't report on something and someone asks me, I'll be like, I just no one said anything to me. Like if you send it to me, I'll do it. But like not when it's like a week later. But like if it's within that day or so, it's like, well, I mean, if you send it to me, I can get it out. But like if it's like a week later, it's like, well, I mean, it was last week.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
no one ever said anything to me. So I mean, it's like, what are you gonna do? Like at this point, it's not
Yeah.
worth reporting on. It's old news. So you have to just keep going forward. Which unfortunately, some people may not like that, but it's like you also have to understand the way our sites work. It's like you can't get a story out, 6 days later.
I mean, there was one company that announced a factory change, and they announced it to 3 other publications before coming to me. And it was 2 weeks later. I'm like, done.
That.
It's already out there. I mean, what am I doing at this point?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like,
that doesn't make you again. If you want to give it to one source and then the end of the business day send it to everyone else, that's fine. And that's a different. You can't go 2 weeks later. Another one was a guy who got promoted to national sales manager. Right, gave the story to a competitor. It wasn't print media, and then, hey, did you hear I got promoted? I'm like, yeah, I read about it on my competitor. I'm like, he goes, you want to cover it? I'm like, absolutely not. I said, it's not worth my time. I said, and we're not covering it. There's a window, but you can't come to me with the window when the story's already known out there. What am I doing? I'm not cutting and pasting. And we do cut and paste some stuff. I don't want to say it, but at this point, I have to move on to something else.
It's the equivalent of like when you go to you're at a dinner, right? You're at a table with like 7 people,
right?
And you go, oh, I got this thing I gotta tell you guys. And you start to tell the story, and you're like, oh yeah, we already know about it. And you're like, oh, all right. It's the same thing. It's like, what? It's like, why am I gonna tell the story? Everybody already knows.
Yeah, in the other industry I see this go on in the most, because I cover part of this is entertainment.
Yep.
So in the entertainment business, there's People Magazine, there is Billboard Magazine, and there's Rolling Stone, and they do the same thing as the publications we do here, and that's the only other industry where I've seen it go on like to this extent, where it's ridiculous. Fashion industry, not so much. Fashion industry has the same problem we have with samples. But yeah, the entertainment business is the only other one, because those publications I just talked about have such a hold on things. It's mind-boggling, and they pay for these exclusives on top of it. So
sure,
that's not even another story. They go pay. People Magazine will pay to get this story.
Oh yeah, I mean you're talking about industries where
you're talking about millions of people who are reading this compared to.
Oh yeah,
and if your story you're doing for Bob's Cigar Shop in Louisiana, like you're gonna send that to me after you've given that to someone and you're already selling the cigar on your website, I'm like, I'm not really interested in covering it. I'm sorry. And by the way, it doesn't get traffic for me outside of Louisiana, so it's like, sorry, We want to be part of this. We want to help you with your story, and we're certainly willing to do it. But I'm not gonna. You're not gonna come to me like weeks later because you're not selling your cigars.
Yeah, no, I get it, and it's.
Yeah.
I know that I think for you, like, look, like I said, there's parts of it that I don't love, but, like, and I wish it would change, but whatever. I think it's a little more frustrating for you. I mean, obviously you've been around a lot longer, and you do a lot more, and you deal with it more often. So I get it,
Yeah,
but, like, but I at
it's
least
funny, and I
understand
just
where you're
throw my
coming
arms up
from.
in the air when you tell me so. I just throw my arms up in the air. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's like,
but at the same time, by that I mean, like, I understand, like, where you're coming from, because at least
right.
I've been there
You're
enough to know,
starting to
like, I
see,
know
yeah,
what you're saying. Like, this is
yeah,
strange,
yeah, yeah.
and there's
It's
a
why
lot.
so many people quit doing news. I've seen it over the years. There's sites that are going to start challenging the news piece, and they fall. Most of them have fallen. You've lasted longer than most of them.
Yeah, and I don't have any plans on stopping. It's just one of those things where it's like, if I run into a roadblock, I'm like, well, all right, I'll just deal with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and and some people, I said, they're friends of mine, and I've had these comments. I said, there's no, and I have not, this policy about the store exclusive stuff, I have not budged on. There is no second chance with that. And you could be mad at me. I've had a iron fist. I've had to do that one with, because once I kind of crack the ice with that. Now, if something went to my spam folder by accident, I'm reasonable. Like, and that's happened a few times. Like, if something goes to the spam folder and it was sent to me, that's a different story. I'll totally make. But I actually now have really been. We actually check the spam filters twice a day now to make sure something doesn't get lost that way. But that happened once a soccer press release went into the spam folder, and he got like, "Why isn't anyone covering it?" I'm like, "I didn't get it." And he's like, "I sent it to you," and I'm like, "It was buried in a spam folder." Yeah. So that was.
Hey, I've been there too.
Like, Steve, that's our fault, not yours. And yeah, so it was the one where he was stopping opening retailers, and he's like, nobody covered this. I'm like, I go, well, it'd be nice if you sent it to me. And he shows me it was sent to me. I'm like, it's like, oh look, it's in the spam folder. That's a different story. We make that's something I'll make good at. I'm not. That's not. That's where I'll make.
Shame on you, Cooper.
Oh, it's a. I know. Like, then I'm getting hate. Why didn't you cover soccer? Like like. There's nothing like the soccer people when they complain about a review or it's like I keep going back to the Sin Compromiso review. I got more hate mail on that thing, accused of costing Steve a consensus one year by someone. If you would have ranked him, he would have made the consensus at number one with Sin Compromiso. Like.
Are you talking about last year?
No, the original Sin Compromiso, right? I gave it an 89, and people were horrified. I gave that cigar an 89. That's not a bad score. It's a good score, right?
Yeah.
And people were horrified, and like, how can you? That's one of the best cigars ever. And then he got number 2 on the consensus with it, right? And someone actually went and looked at the scoring and said, if you would have had this cigar ranked in the top 10, he would have won the consensus that year. Like I have nothing to do with that.
So, look, I know what you're gonna say, and it's kind of fitting that we're having this conversation. So, I just happened to notice I got an alert from Half Wheel that a specific thing just went live.
Well, you get Half Wheel alerts. Interesting. Okay.
Nicole does.
There you go.
This is her laptop. So you take it up with
Okay,
Nicole. My laptop doesn't do that. All right. Not that I don't love those guys over there. They're great guys, but
they're great guys. Yeah, no, they're great guys. Like I said, my own team reads Half Wheel before Coop. So.
And I like to read everyone else too, because it's like you like to. But whatever. I'm not going to defend it. I go to Half Wheel's website too from time to time if certain things go up because I'm interested in what they have to say. It's more so in the reviews because I'm.
Does Nicole have a Coop alert? Does Nicole have a Coop alert?
I think she does. Yes.
Okay, so
she has all the alerts.
Right.
But the other thing I have to say is, like, a lot of times it's the reviews because I'm curious on what they thought of a particular cigar. It's not necessarily for the news. It's they reviewed this. I'm curious what they thought. So this happens to be a review, and it is of the Saka Khan. And let's see who did it. Who did it? Oh, Brooks did it. Okay. So
I guarantee you that's a good score.
Without cheating, what do you think they gave that cigar? Because you know where I stand on it.
I gave it an 89 when it was the JR release. So I'm going to say 88, which is a good score for them.
91.
Wow. Now 91 puts them in play for the end of your list.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say we rarely agree on our review, Half Wheel and I, the ones I've seen. But 89 wasn't a terrible score for me. I mean, it wasn't like Tricky Tracker or Blue.
Now, I'll be honest. I haven't read all the details because I mean I'm doing this. I'm gonna read. I'm gonna read it all, but I was just curious in the score.
So I will never criticize a site for a score, but I will criticize it if their write-up doesn't match the score. And I can expand on that in a bit, and I'll give an example of that. But yeah, the write-up's got to support the score is the key thing. So
sorry, I just something caught my eye. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So when Barry, we knew that Barry was giving that 102 score to the Alfonso. We knew about that. He told us about it.
Yeah.
Right. So, but the problem I had with Barry's review, and Barry could do whatever he wants. That's certainly thing. I don't think he should have did 102, but there was nothing in that review to make me convinced that not only was a 100-point cigar, but 102. There was nothing to convince me in there, other than he liked the cigar. Okay, it was the best cigar you ever had, but why is it 102? Why is it where's these bonus points coming from? Where is this? Why was this a perfect cigar? That's the part. And he spent more time apologizing for why he was given the 102-point score. Where I think he really should have focused his write-up on why it was. I thought the write-up was weak on that one. Where I think he could have made a statement with that, and he didn't. But again, we knew he was doing that. I don't want to pick on him about that, but a lot of these reviews I'll see. Now, half-wheel reviews I think justify the score in most cases, but there's sites I see scores out there, and I don't understand how it's supporting the write-up supports the score. And look, it's happened to me a couple of times, and that but not a lot. I've had a couple of people say, "You're saying but and usually sometimes I do have to go back and explain it, but most times I don't. But I've got a couple of times I've had it. But I see a lot of sites in general that do a terrible job at that part. So Half Wheel actually does a good job of justifying their score, I think.
I think so, because a lot of the times their reviews I read, especially like the ones that they score really low, because I'm curious. So I'm like, okay, they scored something to 74. Why did they give it that low? And a lot of times, to your point, the way that their reviews are formatted, they do the review, they tell the story, they have all the photos, and then you get to the end, and before you see the score, you have the bullet points of like extra information, and then you see the score, and then there's a description in the score that kind of explains why it got that score. So they take multiple steps to say like, this is what we gave it, but like we had burn issues, and every cigar like it unraveled every time, it was too tight, like it kept canoeing, like this is why this is why it scored low, because the construction was bad. And it was bad across 3 cigars that we all smoked. And, like, they'll even add extra. Sometimes they'll be like, not that they were counted for this review, but, like, I think one time I read something, they were like, 3 or 4 additional were smoked outside of the review that also performed really bad. And it was like, the kind of their way of saying, like, even cigars that weren't part of the review were smoked after the review was done, and those were not as well. So it was like, it kind of, like, further justified why it went back to this score of, like, it's the score kind of still stands. That makes sense because, if you're going to give a high score or a low score, I mean, you have to. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, as we've been writing our reviews over here. They haven't been published yet, but they're in the process of, a couple of being put together right now. That's one thing we've talked about. It's like, well, we're going to be scoring. We don't want to just be handing out high numbers. We don't want to just give everything a low number. But we also want to be critical, but we also want to explain, like, no matter what the score is, why did it get that score? Because everyone's always going to ask, oh, why did it get this? Whether it's high, whether it's low, whether it's not that bad, but someone thinks it could have been better, or someone thinks it could be worse. It's like, why? It's like, well, this is why. You have to tell people why.
And I have a similar thing at the end of mine, why it got it. And, I do the value rating thing, which also, that's where I factor price in.
Yes, you do.
So, yeah, and that came from Stogie Geeks, and I tweaked it a lot when I left Stogie Geeks because it was broken. But that's another story, but I think it works. And, look, the one thing I did a few years ago is I said, I'm recalibrating the scores. And I said, 90 points is going to be what's called the standard of excellence. You're going to have to earn your 90, right? You're not going to be given a 90 as a consolation prize, right? And a lot of that real scoring has gone down into the 88, 87 average range in a lot of cases over the past few years. So, I mean, that's something that has happened because I calibrated it a different way. Then you got these sites, right? And I'm gonna take berries out of it because again, I think they're reviewing cigars that they want to sell and promote, right? Which I think they're very transparent about. So that's not. But there's other sites, right, that I see brands with 96s, right, for people who were dishwashers one week, right, and now suddenly had some unknown factory make them a cigar and it's getting a 96. I mean, what the fuck, right? As I just say, that makes no sense, right? Or I see some people give the boutique, like they skew boutique cigars higher than big company cigars, and it's the same cigars with almost the same tobaccos out of the same factory. It doesn't make sense. That's the stuff that drives me crazy. Like 96s, and what's happened is now these small companies come to me and they want a cigar review and they get an 87 and they're freaking pissed at me, right? I'm like, 87 is not a terrible score, guys. It was a little lower, but than average, but not terrible.
Right.
But some guy out there is giving them a 96, and they think they've created the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's what's happened with scoring. I think Cigar Authority is a completely different animal because they're reviewing cigars that they're selling, right? And they have a good media brand, Cigar Authority. They have good practices all around. So that's not a knock on them, but there's these other guys. I mean, Cigar Authority is not reviewing some obscure cigar and giving it a 97. I mean, it's just, usually when you see these 97s, they're out of some solid brands that have earned a very good. They'll probably like a 91 or 92 on my site, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't want to reward someone because a 90 should be earned. It should be like really earned. You have to work for your 90.
It's a fair point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was time. Look, by the way, I was guilty of this early on with the high scoring. So I saw it and I said, and then I started working. I said, I got to readjust. Something's wrong. Because then I saw people, like, I was just too generous with the scoring. And our job is not to be critical, but it's to be honest. And, I think that's what we do. And I'm curious to see when you guys start rolling out your reviews, and I think you'll do a fine job with it. So I'm not concerned about, that. But yeah, but back to half wheel, again, I hear people knock them. Well, how can they give this score? Guess what? It hits someone else's palate, that score. And it's a subjective approach that's being taken with that. And they have a right as something subjective to put that out there.
Right.
I mean, it's their opinion. It's you have a right to disagree with it, but I see names called sometimes at and that one incident where I saw her in a group, but I thought it was personal attacks are not needed with that. It's okay to disagree with that. I mean, Loomis takes a lot of shit on with his reviews.
Yeah.
People say he's got So I mean, but that's part of the territory. If you're gonna put something out there that's a controversial review, you should be able to take the criticism.
It's true.
Yep.
And like I said before, like, even if you put something that a lot of people disagree with, you have to at least, state your case. Like, well, this is why. I smoked 3, and, it was either, this is why it was so great. Because this is what I tasted. It burned good, and it was a tobacco that I really like, and it went well in this blend. Or if it was bad, you could be like, well, listen, like we did 3, and every single time they fell apart, or like they were plugged, or like whatever. Like it didn't burn right. They kept burning all funky. Like, I mean, you have to tell people why. Don't just be like, well, it wasn't that great. Why?
Yeah.
It just didn't perform well. Yeah, why?
Why? Or why did it perform exceptional? I mean, that's what you gotta go with both ways, right?
Yeah.
And Matt, here's gonna be the funny one, okay? So when you start putting out more reviews and you give a low score, then you get the manufacturer that takes that review and they put it on social media. Oh, wow, thank you guys for reviewing my cigar. But fans who are smoking my cigar, do you think that cigar deserved an 83? And then you know what the answer is going to be. Hell no, that cigar should have been 96. And 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 you're trying to basically build that like anti-reaction up, right? Like rally the masses with that stuff. So he don't know what he's talking about. I never read cigar reviews. Like I never read cigar reviews, but that Charlie gives like low scores. Like, well, you don't read cigar reviews, but you're talking about Charlie's scores, right? So it's like you're gonna get that. Trust me, because I've been victim of that one. So like Sin Compromiso was a great example. Saka didn't really complain about it. I'd say Saka always thinks I'm fair with his reviews. So, but he put out the 89, and people just went crazy. Not me. Oh, it was like, yeah. Well, at least with Paladin. Like, I don't know if you saw on the Paladin review, people wrote that, hey, he was very critical of that cigar making the consensus, but he gave a fair review. And Steve actually commented saying he always thought my reviews were fair. So.
Yeah, no, I mean I think so. I'm glad Steve thinks so. I'm sure not everyone thinks that, but You do the best you can, and
You
we all do.
You do.
We all do. We do the best we can. We just
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, whether it's reviews or media or whatever, we call it how we see it. And I think, and
You
that's
got-
really,
look.
and that's really what the basis of this show even began on. There was an
Yeah.
instance where someone didn't
was
like
an
what we
incident.
had to say, and I said, well, let's just make a statement, and it turned
Yeah.
into a show. But that's
Yeah,
beside the point.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And guess what? This is where this line with media and influencer gets blurred. Okay, because the influencer's job is to influence and promote the brand. The media's job, while it overlaps with some of that, is to report, right? So, like, sometimes we'll do some influencer activity, but if you're media, your job isn't necessarily to just be the good news site. So that's where these lines, and I'm seeing more and more of the media guys emerging where they put on they put on the influencer hat first, and they think that's that's the way to go, and then they want to be considered legitimate media, and it's not the case.
Right. No, I
They're
know.
legitimate influencers. I'm not saying you're not legitimate. You're great as an influencer, but media is a little different. You're playing in a different ballpark with that.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think that's very well said.
Yeah.
I think that's very well said. I think it's a good note to end on too.
Yep, I agree. Yep, because I'm getting some calls here already.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it was a good show. There was a couple of things I know you wanted to cover, and then we had a
No, it was good. It was a fun show as always.
little
By
extra
the way,
banter.
Yep. So put your comments in anyway if you're listening to this as you go, and let us know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not live. Sorry for the people who like to enjoy
Yeah.
live. I'm sorry. You'll get to watch
That's
it.
why there's no
It'll be
comments up
premiered.
tonight. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be premiered at its normal time, so it'll be
Yep.
you'll be able to see it at its normal time, but it won't be live. So, but still,
Yep,
feel
yep.
free to comment along, and you know what, we'll comment along too
We'll
because
comment. Yeah, tag us and we'll comment back. Yep.
yeah, you just
That's
tag
easier
us.
for me to- yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
get it all over our platforms or whatever, and you can comment along, and we'll probably be watching while we're watching baseball. And
Yep.
maybe not Coop. His phone will be off, but he'll
My
get
phone
to
will
you.
be off. Yeah,
he'll get your
the
comments.
Yeah, unless the game's over in the third inning. Well, but that I learned not to do that either. Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
But
All right,
that-
good.
But
Yep.
that's going to do it for Spare Notes this week, guys. Thanks
Take
for
care.
tuning in. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe on social media, YouTube, and everywhere you get your podcasts from. Next week on the Smokin' Tobacco Show, we got Lito Gomez Jr. coming on to talk about Solus, whichever pronunciation you want to use.
Yep.
And that's it. Same time, same place. And we'll see you on the next Spare Notes. All right. Take
Bye-bye.
care, guys.